that better?
Yes,
That's
yes.
perfect, right about there.
Okay. Oh my God.
I won't tell you that you are floating in space, but that's okay.
I saw that on Ghostbusters, half a body. Okay, it's better than none.
That's just because you have an object in front of you. That's why it's doing it. The camera's
don't.
kind of.
I don't.
We're going to go live now.
No, you have your laptop that's turned up.
No. Interesting. I don't. One of those days, guys.
Okay, we're going to begin. Good evening and welcome to the Danville Town Council meeting of Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022. A special welcome to those who are joining us for the first time here tonight. And as usual, we are joined by Maurice and Siri, our city clerk, who we are going to recognize tonight in something very special. And tonight, our assistant town manager, Ty Williams, will be joining us instead of Joe Calabrigo. And of course, Rob Ewing, our city attorney, and will be joined at time to time by staff and other guests. So at this time, Marie, would you like to make an announcement?
Sure. This meeting is being held by teleconference only on Zoom, and a recording of the meeting as well as the written public comment will be made available on the town website. The live transcription feature has been enabled in Zoom, should you choose that option. And let's see, if you have public comment this evening, there's information on each of the agendas on how to participate in each meeting. You can use the raise hand feature for this evening's meeting. When the mayor announces the item, raise your hand in Zoom. And when you are called upon by the mayor, state your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Marie. And at this time, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Fong.
Here.
Councilmember Morgan.
She's here twice, but we'll count her once.
Okay, Councilmember Morgan is in attendance. Councilmember Stepper.
Here.
Vice Mayor Storer.
Here.
And Mayor Arnerich.
Here.
All council members are in attendance.
Great, thank you. And now at this time, we'd be honored to have our Vice Mayor Robert Storer lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And we would ask for everybody except for the Vice Mayor to please mute themselves and join along. And Marie will put up our notice. There you go, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Please place your right hand over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Vice Mayor, thank you so much for getting us off to a great start here tonight. The next item, I will ask our Assistant Town Manager, Ty Williams, are there any changes to the order of the agenda?
Mayor, no changes to the order of the agenda.
Okay, great. Thank you. I will just note, and I'm sure Marie will also say this later in the meeting or at the end to remind us all that our second meeting in May, which will be on May 17th, that meeting will be our new hybrid meeting where the council and our staff will be meeting live at 5 p.m. in the town meeting hall. And we will still have the Zoom feature for people to both view us and to join in live and speak with the council if they choose to do so. So look forward to that. So the next item is item number 4 on our agenda, and this is called For the Good of the Town. And this is an opportunity for anyone to address the council on nothing. Excuse me, let's start over. For the good of the town, opportunity for anyone in our audience who's listening here tonight to speak on any item that is not on the agenda. And because it's not on the agenda, however, we cannot discuss or act on it, but can refer it to staff for further discussion or action. And first I'll go to Marie and ask, did we have any written correspondence under the good of the town? Marie, I'm sorry, you're muted.
Yes, thank you very much. A written request was submitted from Shrishti Mazumdar on behalf of Santa Clara Valley Audubon Society, which included the screen share of a slide deck. Shrishti has the hand raised, so I am going to promote Shrishti to panelist to share screen.
Hi everyone, I'm Srishti. Should I start by sharing my screen?
Yes, please do that. And you have 3 minutes, Christy. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay. Should I start my time now?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes, we're waiting.
Okay. Sorry. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Srishti, and I've lived in Danville my whole life and now attend Monte Vista High School. I am also a volunteer with the Santa Clara Valley Audubon Society. One of our major areas of focus is on reducing artificial light at night and promoting responsible lighting practices. Since LED fixtures have been introduced, artificial light has dramatically increased globally and locally. More and more research highlights the negative effects of too much light on all species, from disorienting birds during migration to trees blooming too early in the season, to baby sea turtles going to the road instead of the ocean, to causing insomnia, mental health problems, and cancer in humans. Just as humans and wildlife need daylight for healthy systems, dark nighttime is just as critical. LEDs exacerbate light pollution because they tend to be a lot brighter and have a colder color or wavelength than traditional light sources. The LED is a much more efficient light source and has many benefits. They last longer, use less energy, and require less maintenance. But since 2012, when cities, businesses, and homes started converting to LEDs, lighting has proliferated and our environment is now overlit as people use more light in more places more of the time. LEDs tend to have a high correlated color temperature, meaning they're colder, brighter light than higher pressure sodium lamps. This is more harmful for humans, ecosystems, and wildlife. Light pollution is a big issue, but it is reversible. At Audubon, we are advocating for responsible uses of light for public health, ecosystem health, and biodiversity. Some cities, including Cupertino and Salt Lake City, are adopting dark sky and bird-safe design ordinances and lighting master plans to regulate artificial light at night. Please require responsible lighting standards for all development projects and consider passing a dark sky ordinance and a lights out program that would turn off all lights in and around buildings during bird migration season. We must ensure lighting from buildings, trails, parking lots, streets, and even large art installations don't inadvertently harm wildlife and habitat or humans. If you'd like to know more information on this issue, please email advocate@scvas.org. Thank you.
Great, Shrishti, thank you so much for that. And if we could ask you to stop screen sharing. And I would just refer you to the way to make this happen is many municipalities already have dark sky lighting requirements for commercial. However, residential has not been included. The California Building Code has the authority to add this, as they've done many things in this arena. And I would encourage you and your organization to contact them. And I think you may find some great success because you can make one effort and change it throughout the entire state of California, and it will become law. So thank you for sharing. Okay, our next person for the good of the town is Katie Mahan. Marie, if we'd bring Katie over. And Katie, welcome.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, Katie, welcome.
Excellent. My name is Katie Mann, and I'm a resident.
Katie-
Mother's Day is this weekend. Hi, sorry.
No, we're just losing you a little bit. So.
Okay, I'm trying to find a quiet spot. Mother's Day is this weekend. I will be celebrating with my 3 young kids, and I will be thinking about the mothers of Latimer Abuelita and Tyrell Wilson, both of whom have to spend this weekend without their beautiful sons. I will be thinking about the pain that they are feeling today and every day. I will be speaking to my children about Latimer and Tyrell, and I will be saying their names. I appreciate the council's recognition of May as a Mental Health Awareness Month. I remind the council that the deaths of Tyrell Wilson and Latimer Abuelita at the hands of a Danville police officer have shown that individuals living with mental health issues are not, in fact, always safe in our community. I also want to reiterate my disappointment in the endorsement of David Livingston for sheriff by members of this council. Tyrell Wilson is dead in part because Sheriff Livingston let a bad police officer back onto the streets of Danville. He has since told us that he would make—
Katie, I'm sorry. That's not an issue before the council. It's not a council issue. That's personal. Please try to address it on things that the council has direct authority over or that the town does. I appreciate the comments. This is not the forum to share that.
Mayor, I just wonder, you guys are listed on the website as members
that's
of the
personal.
council.
Katie, just finish. Please take my advice.
Okay, that's all I have to say today then.
Okay, thank you. And we appreciate you sharing those thoughts though. Thank you. Okay, and our next speaker under For the Good of the Town is Veronica Benjamin. Veronica, welcome back.
One moment.
Hi, Veronica. There you go.
Hi.
Welcome.
Yes, just waiting for the unmute to come. Yes, thank you for having me. Hope you're all having a wonderful start to Mental Health Awareness Month. I have been made terribly aware of the lack of equity in mental health treatment, given that when many of my Caucasian neighbors might have an issue in their family and perhaps call law enforcement or whatever emergency services might be there to offer assistance in the case of a mental health crisis, they will call knowing that they will receive some sort of help, unlike what happened to Latimer Abuelita and Tyrell Wilson in our town, who were both met with unimaginable brutality when really what they needed was care and help. In order to make sure that something like that never happens again, our town has to do everything in its power to not forget. And I know I've asked you before, and I know you've referred me to this or that, bureaucratic process, but both of these men suffered very, very public executions. And so I think it's only fitting that that they have a public memorial that is instituted and led, the foundation of which is led by you, our town representatives, who you say that you have this commitment to mental health. And I would like to see more actions. I know we all like to support the Discovery Center. We have wonderful resources. I know there's many positive things. I know there's many young people who are advocating and have their own community-based organizations. There are many, many wonderful things, but I think we also need to remember the lives of Tyrell Wilson and Latimer Abuelita. And a step in that direction would be creating permanent memorials to both of them. I've heard today from the family of Latimer. I'd invited his sister to speak, but actually her mental health has really taken a downturn just in processing everything that happened to her brother. I know she even has health issues. I believe she's developed some diabetes even from the stress of the ordeal that her family has been through. And she just wanted to share, she shared via text. She says, I've been feeling very anxious. Please let the town of Danville know how much a memorial would mean to us and how my brother's death still and will forever impact us. So that's directly from Jennifer Leon, the sister of Latimer Abuelita. I know Tyrell Wilson's mother, she's still, I didn't even invite her to this today because I know it's still so hard for her to process and to do the kind of advocacy that hopefully she'll be, feel impelled to do later on as she processes her grief, as well as gets answers. The sheriff/coroner still has not released a report on Tyrell's shooting a year on. I know all of you are very ready to blame the DA for what happened and the lateness in events. But in this case, as well as in the previous case, the sheriff, David Livingston, has his share of blame. And I will echo the comments of Katie Mahan that I don't understand how you can in good conscience endorse a sheriff who has blood on his hands.
Veronica, that's a personal
That's not personal
issue.
because
Sorry.
you're doing it as a representative of the
personal.
town. and you have publicly
Veronica, thank
in
you for your
official
comments.
forums
Thank you for your
said that
comment.
the DA, but I just think that
Leave
this
us with
town
your
could
last
do
best word.
this town could do much, much better. This is a town dedicated to the status quo rather than integrity and the well-being of all residents. And I really pray every day that you will do better for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. And next we have Tracy Farhad. Tracy, welcome back.
Thank you. Can you hear me, Mayor?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Mayor, town council members, and staff, it's good to be here tonight. I am Tracy Farhad, President and CEO of Visit Tri-Valley, your destination marketing organization. And I'm actually here for good news because in addition to the Municipal Clerks Week, which now I know, congratulations, Marie, it's also National Travel and Tourism Week. In fact, we're celebrating it for the entire month. And I wanted to just give you some optimism, even though, of course, California's tourism industry has a long way to go to reach recovery. Well, statewide, we just heard from the California state, visitor spending in 21 increased by 46% over 2020 to add $100 billion into our coffers, which is fantastic. That number still remained just 69% of the record-setting levels in 2019, but still, just in Q1 alone, 56,000 new jobs and 33% increase in tax revenues, both local and to the state. So gateway destinations are still slow to recover with a lot of international and domestic meeting business that has been lagging. Folks may not know that business travelers, even though they only make up about 20% of the volume, they actually contribute to 40 to 60% of the spending. So of course, we're all waiting and looking for getting that business traveler to come back. And coming up for the summer, inflation is going to cause over some people to rethink their travel budgets. Even 60% are considering taking fewer road trips if the gas prices don't come down a little lower. But with the federal stimulus of $95 million added to that Visit California budget for tourism last year, that was just a huge boon. That decision was great stimulus for keeping marketing going and keeping California as a desired destination. So there's power and civic pride. I know I have power in it. We're with Danville. The two latest events were a big success. We enjoyed promoting those in addition. And I just want to say that as we continue to align with U.S. Travel's National Travel and Tourism Week and with Visit California and all the partners, we're going to keep leveraging this month to fully recognize the importance of the now and future of travel. So it hinges on our collective resilience. And I thank you all for keeping that going and for supporting Tri-Valley's hospitality industry. Thank you so much.
Great, Tracy. Thanks for everything that you do. And thanks for that update. We really appreciate it. Okay, next we have Kelly Ryan. Kelly, welcome.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I'm going to ask that since we are focusing on mental health, I want to understand more what the town council is planning to do to address mental health with how our streets are policed in Danville. I don't think anyone can argue we need to improve in this area and quite significantly. So if we're going to be serious about mental health, then we need to have training so that our police officers do help all of the people in our community and can see all of the people as valuable and worthy and help them when they are in a crisis. I also want to add that in this, I can certainly say that $10 million that was paid by the county to the families who lost their sons, that money would have been better spent on training our officers so that they know how to handle themselves and for hiring the right people to do the work. I'm very sad that this is where we're at in our town. I've lived here for almost 18 years and I feel super unhappy and sad that what I see as our 5 representatives, I don't feel like you are standing with the people that have been harmed. I feel that, you are also kind of silencing us. If you are going to have those titles, then you have accountability for what you say and do, because it is louder than what I say and do. You speak, whether you like it or not, for our town, you have a title. And so when you choose to raise your voice and stand with those who need your help, that makes a difference. When you choose to not stand with those that need your help, that message is loud and clear. And I feel very sad and disappointed in what the 5 of you have chosen to do. And albeit that is on your personal choice, I get that. However, your titles go along with your personal choices, and they are there for your constituents to see and for the world to see. And I don't think it reflects well on our town. And I am very sad that you have chosen to endorse somebody who is not made good choices for our town, not good choices for our county, and certainly not for the people that walk the streets in our town.
Kelly, thank you for your comments. I will also invite you to get an answer to your question. Is join us for Town Talks this Friday, 9 a.m. Go to the Danville Town website. You can sign up for Town Talks. It's an hour-long discussion on what the town is doing, has done, and will be doing on mental health throughout the county, on both police, first responder responses, the county's rapid response teams, San Ramon Valley Fire, all the above. So please join us at 9 a.m. And next we have Gigi Crowder. Gigi, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm the executive director of Nami here in Contra Costa County, so we serve the full county. I'm a little disappointed that you guys don't allow people to be shown on camera, because we just kicked off our Mayor's Mental Health Awareness Month campaign, and I probably should have been more intentional about making sure that each mayor got their poster. What we have in place is an effort to ensure that Contra Costa County is mental health friendly. So there's this poster with our NAMI logo. Then it says, I'm committed to being a mental health friendly. And in your case, you would put city. And then there's commitments on the back. We'll make sure that you get them. But the commitments read, eliminating stigma and discrimination, operating cultural humility, have paid wellness days. A lot of times people ignore psychiatric disabilities, and people don't get to take those off as paid days. People first language, meaning we wouldn't call a person a schizophrenic, we'd say a person who lives with schizophrenia. And then encouraging and allowing for self-care, open, safe, comfortable environment, and then making mental health resources available. So I'm hoping that the town of Danville will participate in this effort. All 5 supervisors have signed their green ribbon. They're wearing the green and black lapels. We know there were tragedies that took place in Danville, and so a way of healing and supporting us to all get back together to a place where we're more focused on building mental health friendly communities is our effort. And I do want to share with you that there was a lot of tension between Walnut Creek residents and the leaders in Walnut Creek. And about 4 weeks ago, there was a park renamed after young people. It's now called Remembrance Park. And of course, it started from the tragedy of Miles Hall, but the city council members, the mayor, the city manager, everyone was there on a day of healing, really, when they renamed that park Remembrance Park. So there's just an opportunity for you guys to think about what you could do to kind of start doing some of the work of healing because of the tragedies. So I appreciate you, and we'll give you an opportunity to get the poster. I'll send it, I guess, to you, Mayor. You would sign in the middle, and then all the other city council members would sign around it. And I think I have your email address. I can forward you what it would look like. But yeah, let's start the healing process by coming together and making sure that the town of Danville is mental health friendly. So thank you for your time. We at NAMI always there to support you all in any effort in the right direction. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Gigi. It's great to hear your voice again. We can see your picture. We can't see the poster. But please know that we do support that and we will sign up for that. In addition, if you can send me that poster and that information, I will also personally send it out on my email system. And again, thank you. Is there anybody else here who would like to address the council under for good of the town? If so, please raise your virtual hand and we'll call on. Seeing none, then we will close the public hearing on this. And that will take us to the next item on our agenda, which is item number 5, which is proclamations. And the first one tonight is under 5.1, presentation of a proclamation to our city clerk, Maurice and Siri, recognizing May 1st through May 7th as the 53rd annual Professional Municipal Clerks Week. And if I may, I will read the proclamation and then ask Marie to say a couple of words. So, whereas the office of professional municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world, and whereas the office of professional municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants and provides the professional link between the citizens, local governing bodies, agency of government at other levels, and whereas professional municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all, whereas professional municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of professional municipal clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and annual meetings within their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. Where it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the office of the professional municipal clerk, and now therefore it be resolved that the Danville Town Council does hereby recognize the week of May 1st through May 7th, 2022 as Professional Municipal Clerk Week, and further extend our appreciation to our professional municipal clerk, Maurice and Siri, who is tonight here and always running our meetings, and to all professional municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. Marie, on behalf of the council, we present this to you and add our personal thanks for the work that you do to create equal access of information, the steward of record keeping, and to the work that you do in running and administering our elections and helping educate people about all those wonderful things. Marie, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you. From the entire staff of the city clerk's office.
One.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Town Council. And if anyone in the community wants to know more about what a city clerk does, the Live Locally newsletter will explain a little bit more. And again, thank you for supporting me both personally and professionally over the last 30 years. I greatly appreciate it. Thanks.
Marie, thank you. And thanks again for everything you've done to keep us on track, to make sure our public postings are correct, to make sure agendas are all done accurately, and to all of the public records requests that you have to respond to do that in a very timely manner. And you have digitized and brought the town of Danville into the 21st century, not only for campaigns, but for all the access to our documents that people oftentimes can go directly to our site and extract the information they're looking at without having to contact anybody. So thank you for that. Well done. Okay, this will take us to the next item, which is item 5.2, and this is a proclamation that will be presenting, recognizing the month of May as Mental Health Awareness. And tonight we are joined by the clinical director, Dr. Ccta Dimitrakos from Discovery Counseling Center. And for full disclosure, I have been a member of the board of directors and a fundraiser for Discovery Counseling Center for about 23 years. So it's my pleasure on behalf of our entire council, Ccta, to present this proclamation. I will read it and then ask you to say a few words. Whereas mental health is essential to our overall health, and the importance of attending to mental health has become even more pronounced during the COVID pandemic, which has not only negatively impacted many people's mental health, but has also created barriers to treatment. And whereas Recent data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention indicates that 1 in 4 adults reported experiencing symptoms of an anxiety or depressive disorder in February of 2021, which is a significant increase from the prior year. And youth mental health is also worsening, with 10% of Americans' youth reporting severe depression. Whereas discrimination against those with mental health conditions in our society remains, which can make it difficult to find and reach out for help. But whereas mental health recovery not only benefits individuals with mental health disorders by focusing on their abilities to live, work, learn, and fully participate and contribute to our society, but also enriches the culture of our community life. Whereas each business, school, government agency, healthcare provider, organization, and citizens share the burden of mental health and have a responsibility to promote mental wellness and support prevention efforts. Now, therefore, it be resolved, the Danville Town Council does hereby proclaim the month of May 2022 as Mental Health Awareness Month in the town of Danville. Nita, thank you to you and to Discovery Counseling Center for 50 years of work in trying to help make our communities healthier. Nita, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and all the town council members. What a great honor it is to be here. And I accept your gratitude, but I really want to give our gratitude for all of your support and the way that you are dedicated to our commitment to the community. And through you, we're able to do everything that we do. So I thank you, and it's an honor to accept this. At Discovery, we are fully committed and dedicated to doing all that we can to educate the community, to offer mental health services across the board. As you know, Mayor, we're partnered with the school district, and we have a training program where we have interns in every school in the district, working with children and families and trying to promote mental wellness and understanding of how to go through, how to endure life's challenges. So I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be in this position. We've got 14 licensed staff therapists at Discovery and 39 interns out there doing the work. And I do just want to address, I really appreciated the public comments. And I just want to share that from our perspective, we take diversity, equity, and inclusion in our initiatives. We take it to heart. We take it seriously. It's ingrained in all of the work that we're doing in our training program. And it's really important from a mental health perspective to keep that at the forefront. So thank you for all that you continue to do. Thank you for allowing me to be here to speak on behalf of Discovery.
Great. Thank you, Nita. And I appreciate those comments particularly, and also acknowledging that the DEI culture that Discovery Counseling Center lives and breathes was also shown in the hiring of the new executive director.
Yes.
To replace Kathy Shiverton. So we are really proud and excited to have her on board. And again, please pass on our thanks to you and all your staff, and particularly for looking after our children to make them healthy. So
yes, yes. Thank you. It's a joint effort, and together we're making it happen. So thank you.
Great. And Councilmember Stepper, you need to unmute. Sorry.
Thank you. We were so careful at the beginning, so yes. Appreciate that. Last weekend was the Child Abuse Prevention Program month that we do for Exchange Club down at Lenardi's with 2 petting zoos, and the number of parents and families that showed up and the amount of materials that we gave to people to take home was incredible. Nobody turned us down. And it's a nonpartisan effort, and it came from Contra Costa Council, but also from Discovery Center and from the exchange materials that are published in Ohio. And so many of those address everything from teenagers, both in English and Spanish, and autism and strong families, online interaction. And I won't say any more other than that I was grateful to Discovery to be one of our partners.
Thank you. Thank you. One big initiative that we're taking very serious is more collaboration with different aspects of our community coming together and working together to make sure that our mental health is sound. So thank you again. Thank you so much for letting me be here.
Nisa, thank you again. And again, please say hello to everybody at
I will.
And all
thank you so much.
39 interns.
Yes.
Wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, this will take us to item number 6 on our agenda. And tonight that is a consent calendar. And we have items number 6.1 through 6.8. These items are considered routine and the council may act in one motion to approve these without discussion as they are considered routine. However, if there's any council member who would like to remove any items for discussion, we can do so. Is there anybody on the council who would like to remove an item? Seeing none. Marie, did we have any correspondence on this?
No requests to comment on any of the consent calendar items.
Okay, and if there was anybody in our attendees who would like to comment specifically on either item 6.1 through 6.8, we can remove that item for discussion, and you can use the virtual raised hand feature in Zoom, and we will call on you at this time. Is there anybody who'd like to speak on any item in the consent calendar? Okay, seeing none, then we'll close the public comment and the items back for discussion or action by the council.
Make a motion that we approve items 6.1 to 6.8 on the consent calendar this evening.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Vice Mayor Storr, seconded by Councilmember Morgan. Any further comments or discussion? Seeing none, then Marie, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Fong?
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan?
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Storr?
Yes.
And Mayor Arnerich?
Yes.
The consent calendar was approved unanimously.
Great, thank you. And thank you everybody for that. And now this takes us to item number 7 under communications. And tonight we're delighted to have an update on the Contra Costa Transportation Authority, also known as Ccta. And our Executive Director, Tim Hale, is here tonight to give us what's going on, what projects, and sort of what the future vision of transportation looks like. Tim, welcome.
Well, thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Town Council members. I really appreciate being here tonight to share a little bit what's going on at Contra Costa Transportation Authority. There's a lot of exciting things going on, particularly along the 680 corridor. And I wanted to share with you a few slides. Let me just share my screen. So one of the things that in terms of the vision is really looking at ways to better connect all of our communities together. As all of you know, we have 19 cities in the county and Contra Costa County. And a lot of us are really looking at it from the standpoint of, silos. And so really what we're trying to accomplish is how can we do a better job of really connecting the transportation infrastructure and also connecting people to transportation in a more efficient way. And so before I kind of get into, I think it's always important to kind of cover what Contra Costa Transportation Authority does. We are a voter approved sales tax agency here in Contra Costa County. We collect a 0.5-cent sales tax here in the county to deliver essentially what you see on the screen here, $2.7 billion of programs and projects in Contra Costa County. We deliver everything from small projects, from pedestrians and bicycle projects to large projects, but also deliver a number of programs such as for the seniors and disabled, Safe Route to Schools, as well as transit. We've also been working to really deliver all of our capital commitments in the Measure J and Measure C Transportation Expenditure Plan. You may be familiar with some of these projects on here. For example, in Danville, a lot of the I-680 widening for the lanes that go in between the on and off ramps, as well as the express lanes, also the fourth bore, the Caldecott Tunnel. All of those improvements have been brought to you by Contra Costa Transportation Authority, as well as your sales tax dollars in the county. And how are we able to do that? We are able to leverage every dollar that we collect in sales tax is a way to attract and state and regional and federal funds into Contra Costa County. So by having a local sales tax, we've been able to leverage and generate about a total investment of about $5.6 billion of transportation improvements in Contra Costa County. And that's capital. That's not even including the programs that Measure J funds to the end of the measure in 2034. So this slide is really to kind of talk about, coming out of COVID, also dealing with a number of new climate change policies in the state. Also looking at, transit is recovering. People are not necessarily looking to get into transit. People are working from home. Also, our children and people are walking and biking more. And so we're really kind of at this tipping point in transportation of it's extremely dynamic because of the work and home environment that we're in. And so we're really looking at how can we address this more dynamic mobility question here in Contra Costa County. So one thing that we did is during the pandemic, we did a travel behavior study. As part of that travel behavior study, we wanted to get an understanding of, once we're coming out of the pandemic, would your travel behavior habits change? And if they change, what would be some of the modes that you'd be willing to move into? And so this is just a snapshot. We have a lot of data as part of this travel behavior study, but we were able to reach out to about 30,000 people in Contra Costa County, about 12,000 actually along the 680 corridor. And so as you can see here, people are really interested in getting into the other modes of transportation. About 44% of daily drivers in the 680 corridor are really looking to get out of their cars and into other modes of transportation. And so this just gives you a flavor of what people are looking for in terms of, carpooling, transit, walking, biking, as well as telecommuting. And telecommuting is now a congestion management strategy. So to kind of address some of those things, the Ccta board adopted a Vision Zero implementation guide in September of 21. And it really took a commitment to rolling out tools as well as a safe, what we call a safe systems approach to really ways to design our roads for safer walking and biking. And so when you look to the left of this slide, you can kind of see that, walking and biking is kind of a little bit confusing in terms of how people are entering and exiting the streets. And so with the safe systems or Vision Zero approach, we can take small measures, what we call quick build projects, to put in refuge areas, islands, to make walking and biking more safe, and then thereby hopefully getting more people to walk and bike. And actually over the last year, there's been a 22% increase in walking and a 13% increase in biking in Contra Costa County over the last year. Another thing that we're really interested in is because people are looking to really look at how we can use transit in their everyday commutes is making transit better, really taking a transit first approach and looking at ways that we can integrate and make transit more efficient. Not everyone wants to use BART. And so what other modes can we provide that could either complement or replace BART in a way that can get you from, say, Danville down to San Jose through like an express bus service, or up to Walnut Creek in an express bus service. And so by looking at an integrated transit approach, as well as looking at different ways to potentially prioritize space in the future, because we're not going to be widening and building ourselves out of congestion. And so we need to look strategically at certain roads, not all roads in Contra Costa County, but certain roads may warrant some reprioritization in terms of addressing first and last mile connections, walking and biking, as well as also a coordinated approach to moving to zero emissions with our heavy duty vehicles, such as hydrogen and electric. And a very exciting project that we are developing across the county, working closely with the city of Danville, is a countywide connected signal system. This signal system will really provide the foundation of a more connected environment and really provide that backbone of communication for the future. And so we're looking at not only optimizing traffic signals, but also adding elements like prioritizing for emergency vehicles, but also prioritizing for transit, and also preparing our intersections for the future for connected vehicles, as well as making our intersections safer for walking and biking with better detection for pedestrians and bicyclists. Another element that we're working on is moving towards that zero emissions. and really preparing for the adoption of electric vehicles in Contra Costa County. Contra Costa County is literally in the top 10 in the state and relative to the rate of adoption of electric vehicles. And we want to make sure we've got the infrastructure to be able to stay on pace with that rate of adoption. One thing we are working on is we just recently got a grant from the California Energy Commission to install electric vehicle charging, but also workforce development. As we install electric vehicle charging and have maintenance of electric vehicles, we need that workforce development component, but also provide rebates for electric bikes, as well as install electric bike micromobility or bike share type programs along the 680 corridor and into these communities. Another aspect that we're working on is focusing on accessible transportation. Right now, about 15% of the people in Contra Costa County are over the age of 65, and that population is supposed to double by the year 2035. And so we want to make sure that as have this growing aging population, that we have the proper infrastructure and transportation needs for all of those people, including a more efficient one-seat ride system. County Connection, our transit provider in the 680 corridor, has been working and developing a one-seat ride option for accessible transportation in Contra Costa County. And it's been proven to be quite successful. And we're looking to expand that through our accessible transportation strategic plan. So we are moving ahead towards the future. About every 4 to 5 years, we update our countywide transportation plan. And we're really, with the advent of a lot of the technology and innovation, but also with the new direction that transportation is going into, we need to really focus on how we're going to provide transportation and mobility for all. And we're doing that through updating our countywide transportation plan. And that really starts with learning and working with the local jurisdictions and the communities to understand what those needs are, what interests people, and then making sure that we address that through obviously a number of new policies, but also a whole brand new financially a project list. And this project list will basically outline all of the infrastructure programs that we might see in the future. And this could potentially lead into some sort of future transportation expenditure plan in Contra Costa County. So as you all know, Ccta is really known for innovation. We are continuing to grow and use Momentum Station, which is our 5,000 acre secure autonomous vehicle test bed in the Contra weapons station. And this is really to not only just, really get testing and get excited about really cool things, but really looking for applicable ways of applying technology to improve people's quality of life. And you may remember that we test the shared autonomous vehicle on the right-hand side at Bishop Ranch, and we're actually getting ready to deploy a shared autonomous vehicle at Bishop Ranch next year for actual commercial use. Likewise, we're working on a dynamic personal microtransit project on the bottom left. This is a vehicle that we're testing at Momentum Station, and we've designed a project in East Contra Costa County. And this is intended to be a personalized mobility option where you can either ride by yourself or opt in to share with other people. And it's within a closed system, which makes it more efficient and and provides a lot of capacity and access across the county. So I wanted to, based on that mobility program and based on Momentum Station, it really kind of, I'll say, incubated our Innovate 680 program, which is really our attempt to say, how do we manage congestion without widening our freeway? How do we optimize the existing infrastructure? How do we make it more connected? How do we actually get better access to these transportation modes for all users in this corridor? And we're really doing that with 6 projects and a set of strategies. And so to really walk you through what this means is we're developing a mobile application where you can put in your origin and destination and give you the options of where you want to get to go. Once you decide where you want to go, you might ride your bike to or walk to a shared mobility hub nearby you. This would be less than a half a mile of where you're at. And then you would have access to a suite of options, such as a bus. And you would get on this bus and we'd be able to prioritize that bus but to bypass congestion, and then also to bypass congestion on the freeway. And then it would arrive at the BART station or at your destination. And when you arrive timely at your destination, we'd be able to really protect that connection to make sure that you arrive on time And that really is where that integrated transit plan comes to play, to really coordinate those schedules and make sure that you really have this seamless experience. And after your trip, you would receive a number of awards or rewards for your trip based on using transit and other modes of transportation. Another element of this project is really to prepare the corridor of the future, and something we're working on with Nissan and Verizon along the 680 corridor in San Ramon and Danville is being able to use connected and autonomous vehicles in the 680 corridor to help improve traffic flow, help improve safety, and also to help meet our Vision Zero goals by actually detecting and actually prompting the driver that there's a pedestrian or bicyclist and avoid hitting or colliding with that pedestrian bicyclist in an intersection, a local road intersection. And so by having this wireless connectivity in the corridor really provides a lot of opportunity to help optimize traffic, and connect people to the infrastructure. This is a really busy slide, I apologize, but really what this means, Councilmember Stepper and Councilmember Storer are on and participating in our Innovate 680 Policy Advisory Committee. And we're basically assessing a number of policies to really bring this vision to reality. To do what I just described in terms of walking through that user case, as well as the previous slide, you really need a systems of systems to be able to bring all of those seamless experiences together. And by doing that, you need to address a number of policies. And so some of the things that we're talking about is developing this countywide connected data center, also talking about delegated and automated control of pieces of the infrastructure, potentially like traffic signals or ramp meters or transit, to be able to really connect these systems together to make available and provide that seamless experience, but also have an operations center in Contra Costa County that can really house and bring all that together in the future. These are also a number of the policies. I'm not going to get into all of them, but you will see that we're trying to really break down a lot of the institutional barriers to really make this seamless system happen. As you're aware, we've got a lot of players. We've got Metropolitan Transportation Commission, Caltrans, our local jurisdictions, but also our emergency service providers, as well as Freeway Service Patrol. A lot of these entities are going to have to be coordinated to really bring all of these different policies and this seamless experience to reality. And one key aspect of this is really looking at how we can develop and coordinate this systems of systems and operations of these different systems in a more regional basis. And this gets into that operations center. And really some of the benefits that you'll see is, travel time savings, being able to better coordinate emergency service response, also being able to modify the transportation system to deal with incident management, but also to be able to deal with events and other things that might be happening in the corridor, and also sharing the cost of operations of all of these different new elements that we're trying to put in place to provide this seamless experience. So we've been talking a lot about this as part of the Innovate 680 program, and with Councilmember Stepper and Councilmember Storer about how to really discuss and address all these policies at both the regional, the statewide, and local level to really bring Innovate 680 really to reality. So that concludes my presentation. I know I got into some detail there on Innovate 680, but that was intentional to really kind of bring up to speed about what we're working on and how to really bring this overall seamless experience project to reality to meet our vision in the future.
Tim, great. Thank you so much for that. It's really exciting. And I know, as you said, it's a little complicated, but particularly on the I-680, if that has the success, and it's the first of its kind in the United States, with all of the technology and the people who have gotten involved from the University of California to Toyota, that if it does one thing, which is relieve our traffic off of our local roads, when that freeway blocks, we get gridlock within our own town at no fault to what we're doing. And I know one of those elements, our transportation director, Andrew Dillard, who's listening in tonight, has been working with Caltrans to see if we can take control of the freeway traffic signal and tie it into our systems so we can get that more seamless and virtual. That would be one of those steps to get us closer to that goal. So thank you. Questions or comments from council members? Vice Mayor Storer? And then Karen Zephyr.
Tim, first of all, thank you for the presentation, and this council and the community in Contra Costa County appreciate your vision of the future, because we need to move people from place to place more efficiently, and that's basically what we're looking at here. But you know, I hadn't seen that slide before. I took a picture of it while you had it up, and it was the willingness to use modes. Now, for some reason, if I missed it, I apologize, but that's actually a pretty cool slide. Now, that was done after, or in the period of time we're in right now, sort of post-COVID. You're muted.
Yeah, that's correct. So what we did is we did it right in the middle of COVID. It was actually something that we were already planning on doing even before COVID happened. And it just the timing was perfect in terms of surveying folks. What were your travel habits before COVID, during COVID, and if your travel habits will change after COVID, and if they did, what modes would you change? And so that all happened basically in late 2020 is when we did that travel behavior study.
Okay, so now, was there a study done before COVID? And the reason I ask is, if there were, did the pattern change after COVID? Did people's mindset change and look at other ways to get from point A to point B?
Yes, that was the whole intent of the study, was to look at what people were doing before COVID and then how those things would change over time after COVID. And so we have a whole slide deck on the travel behavior study, but there's a lot of data there, but it provides us a lot of insights on how we can plan for the future of the transportation.
Yeah, and I appreciate you mentioning One Ride, and that is becoming an extremely successful program, because we can actually cross jurisdictional lines now and take people actually from the beginning of the ride to the completion of the ride without them having to get out of a bus and make transfers. So we can make this a lot more efficient, and that'll be part of my report tonight as well. And as always, we appreciate your support on Bus on the Shoulder. You know, very exciting concept. To be able to have a bus go onto a shoulder when the traffic on a freeway goes below 35 miles an hour, extremely exciting, and I can't wait for that moment to take place. And once again, thank you for your vision in Contra Costa County. I appreciate you.
Great, thanks, Vice Minister. Councilmember Stepper. Karen, you need to unmute, sorry. Thank you, you're very disciplined now, I appreciate that.
All right, thank you. The fact is that flow chart that you put up there, no one expected anyone to suddenly read it. In fact, we spend like a whole meeting for several hours on 3 of those squares of the 20 squares that are up there to get understanding all the things and how complicated it is to get people to work together when we can't even quite accomplish that with all the bus systems that occur in here. I know Robert sees that too, particularly at County Connection. And so the fact that everyone is working toward that is really an amazing achievement right there in and of itself. And so we're excited about looking at some of those alternatives, but I think that COVID has given us a vision that we never had before. By the time you've got so many people working at home, schooling at home, and not talking about going to 100% to where there used to be, the equation has changed. So we have actually good timing for this opportunity. And so I appreciate what you're trying to accomplish, because as we talk about these, because the part that didn't maybe come through clearly is there will be a lot of things that when you're not having to transfer different kinds of transportation anymore, that the only way you can do that with this many systems on that flow chart is to be able to do that mechanically through the computer. Wrong word probably, but computerization in order to do that. It can't be somebody sitting there and watching it. We've come way far from where transportation used to be. So thank you for directing that, Tim. Thank you for coming tonight.
Great, thank you, Karen. And Karen and Robert, thank you both for serving on that. I don't even know how you guys got on there, but congratulations. We look forward to always hearing your updates about that. So
it's been a number of years.
Yeah, no, I know. That's great. Hold on. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for that. And we're going to hear a little more from some reporting out on that on the council reports later. So Tim, please give our best and thanks to your entire staff and everybody for the great job that you're doing. And thanks. And we look forward to seeing you come back in a few months and give us another update. Thank you.
Hey, can I just add one more thing? And I
Sure.
want just an appreciation of Tim. I had sat down in a meeting with the I-680 group, and one of the questions was, are we looking at this thing like 10 or 15 years down the road? Because there's so many moving pieces and so many complications. And Tim's like, no, we're actually going to get this done in about, I don't know, 4 years, less than 4 years, maybe. I heard less than 4 years, right, Tim? Was that what it was?
4 to 6 years. 4 to 6 years.
I heard the
Yeah,
4.
there's certain elements that are early delivery, and there's other elements that'll happen in
I understand.
Yeah.
It has phasing to it. It has to.
It does. It does.
Thank you for that. Okay, great. Well, thanks again. All right, this takes us to item number 8 under 8.1, public hearings. And this is consider an introduction of ordinance number 2022-03, temporarily suspending outdoor seating limitations for restaurant uses within the town of Danville and authorizing extension of temporary use land permits and approving street closures with a temporary waiver of Danville Ordinance number 96-10. And we're going to start off with David Crompton, but just to remind everybody how this works, we will have a staff report who will give us an update on the direction the council gave last time, conversations they've had in coming up with some solutions of things that we asked for. And then we will open to council questions only. And I just ask you again, please refrain from your opinions. Let's give our due respect to those who would like to give us their comments and their thoughts before we do that. And then we will go to a public hearing on this and ask for comments from those that are joined us here today. Plus we received, I believe, an additional 2 letters. And then it will come back to the council for questions. And we'll have Dave Crompton, our staff, answer any questions that he saw from our public, council questions, and then council action. So if we're good with that, David, welcome.
Well, thank you, and good evening, Mayor Onrick and council members. As you all recall, back at your meeting on April 5th, we held a session for discussion of the status and the future of our downtown temporary land use permits for the expanded outdoor seating. And at that meeting, the council directed staff to prepare an ordinance to come back to the council, which would accomplish the goal of continuing or extending the temporary land use permits and allowing for the expanded outdoor seating from when they are currently scheduled to expire, which would be July 1st, until January 3rd of 2023. And so the ordinance that you have before you tonight, Ordinance 22-03, would accomplish those requests. And more specifically, it would amend the town's downtown business district ordinance to temporarily suspend the requirement to pay off-site parking lieu fees. As you know, the extended outdoor seating, in addition to the allowance for back to 100% indoor seating for restaurants, in many cases has resulted in much more seating area than was approved pre-COVID. And so without the waiver of parking fees, there would be some fairly significant parking lieu fee requirements that would need to be paid to maintain the additional outdoor seating. And the other portion is the amendment of ordinance number 96-10. And so that would allow for the consumption of alcohol within the public right of way within the parklets that have been approved. Also listening to the council on the 5th, we've added a number of additional development standards and land use limitations to address some of the issues that were raised. I'm going to walk through them briefly. The first one is that there would be a requirement that there be no amplified outdoor music. And again, I want to emphasize that these standards that are in the ordinance, if you approve these would be carried over to the new land use permits that would be sent to all of the recipients of the outdoor seating land use permits that would begin on July 1st. We also have a requirement that all garbage bins be kept in approved garbage enclosures and not within public parking lots and rights of way. And so that has been an issue that seems to be, it was an issue throughout, but it seems to be becoming more of an issue. So we want to address that. It also require that garbage bins, areas, enclosures, and pickup areas be maintained in a way that is easily accessible by our solid waste provider. There would be a requirement that all business operators keep the outdoor seating areas clear of litter and debris. There would be a requirement that all structures, dining areas, structures, and barriers related to outdoor seating be maintained in a clean and like new condition. Requires that dilapidated materials related to outdoor dining areas, such as ripped or dirty canopies, be repaired and or cleaned on an ongoing basis. And any dilapidated materials, such as wood railings or plywood, be replaced or painted to maintain their like new condition. And we would also continue to have the condition in there that requires that all temporary land use permit outdoor areas comply with our sign ordinance. And many of these have been in our conditions, and I understand that the council would like to see more aggressive enforcement on some of these. And so we've heard you on that, and that's something that we would endeavor to do. And then the last part that I want to spend a little bit more time on is that, as recommended in this ordinance, the parklets that are on Church Street would be modified to allow for us to get back two-way traffic. This would be both on the west side between Harts and Railroad, and on the east side between Harts and the Village Theater parking lot. And so to do that, I'm going to walk through a series of slides. So I'm going to share my screen. And I'm assuming you can all see that. So this is going back into our way back time machine and going back pre-pandemic. As you can see, Church Street is a 40-foot wide street. It includes two 8-foot parking lanes, one on the north, one on the south, and then two 12-foot traffic lanes. And Church Street is fairly important connector street. It provides direct connection to and from the Andronico's shopping center, as well as access to and from the town's municipal parking lots along Front Street. Moving forward, and I'm focusing on this western portion, going back to June of 2020, when the state allowed restaurants to reopen, but only allowing for outdoor seating with social distancing. The town approved land use permits for both Casino Hermanos and Albatross, and this is a diagram of that approval. Both of them limited the parklet areas on the street to be 8 feet wide times 72 feet long. And so this is the recent condition of Church Street. Over time, both of those restaurants, Albatross and Casino Hermanos, those tents got extended out to the center line of the street. And so those occupy both 8-foot parking lane as well as a 12-foot drive aisle. So they extend about 20 feet out. And just to emphasize that these were never approved as part of the land use permits. This kind of happened over time. But the town did not actively enforce the approvals up until several months ago. Over the last 6 months, we've received complaints from some of the surrounding property owners and the public. And so this diagrams some of the concerns we've raised from surrounding businesses. And this is mostly across the street on the north side of Church, where that property owner has a driveway access to a small parking lot that they have trouble accessing at times. The garbage trucks and the garbage provider that we hear from also has had issues getting in and out and picking up traffic because of the narrowness of the street. There's a garbage pickup both on the left there within this building and then towards the parking lot. And the results of them trying to get in and out with those trucks, you can see damage done to some of the street trees that they've hit, as well as some of the landscaping along the north side that has had to be removed because it's been run over and damaged by the trucks. And more than that, the reason the town has actually gotten involved here for starting several months ago is that we have received some complaints, and got out and investigated and have become concerned regarding public safety with the site visibility here at the intersection of Church and Railroad. So as you can see, as you try to cross that crosswalk to the north, it's hard to see the vehicles that are driving that one-way road pulling up to that stop light. And it's also hard for the vehicles to see pedestrians that start across the street. And so we've seen it, we've witnessed it, and we've heard complaints about that. And that's really what started the town working with the Albatross several months ago to address that safety issue. And so staff's recommendation for the west side of Church would be to bring those two parklets back to where they were originally approved, which is 8 feet wide and something like 50 feet long. I want to emphasize that these are really the only parklets in the public right-of-way in town that extend far beyond 8 feet. And so this would kind of bring them back to where they are. And you can see on the cross section there to the left, what this would basically do is allow for the parklet to occupy one of the parking lanes, still maintain the two 12-foot traffic lanes, and allow for the parking lane on the north side of the street. So this would basically bring the street back to where it was pre-pandemic, just with no parking on the south side. And then to focus on the east side, so this is between Hart's and the Village Theater parking lots. Going again back to June of 2020, when we had everybody wanting to open up outside. This was the site plan that we approved for Harvest, for the Vine, and for Bridges. We knew that in this case, we were closing down this entire street. And so they were permitted to extend further out and basically occupy both of the travel lanes. And you can see the extent of the tables and area also for Bridges along one side of the street. Over the last couple of months, I think maybe over 4 to 6 weeks ago, the owner of the Vine and Bridges voluntarily removed his parklets. That was not because of any discussion with the town. That was something that that owner did. I guess he felt like he didn't need them anymore. So what we have left there is one-way traffic westbound out to Hart's. And so what staff's recommendation would be is that the other parklet that is on the south side there, which is Danville Harvest, would be modified to be, again, 8 feet wide maximum from the curb. It could be longer than it showed there. Actually, I think it does extend there, but the tent doesn't cover the entire outdoor seating area. So by modifying it to 8 feet wide, that would also allow for two 12-foot drive aisles and for two-way traffic that's a part of Church and access in and out of the town's parking lot. And so that summarizes the town's recommendation. We have quite a team here. I have Jill Bergman, we have Ty Williams, and also Andy Dillard, I think, is in the weeds here somewhere. And so we collectively would be happy to answer any questions you have. Or again, our recommendations that you adopt the ordinance, and for first reading, it would return to you for second reading in 2 weeks, and we'd be available for any questions you have. Thank you.
Great, David. David, that was really well done. Thanks for all the work you've done. Marie, can I ask you a favor? Can you bring Andrew Dillard from attendee over to panelists in case we do have a question? Oh, there he is.
On his way.
Oh, got him. Okay. I see him. There he is. Now he's in one spot. Great. Okay, let's go to questions first. We'll go to Councilmember Renee Morgan.
Thank you, David, so much for all the information and being so precise and hearing us at the last time that we had the opportunity to speak. I did have a few questions, and I just kind of wanted to point out a couple things. First of all, we have not defined the size or nature when we refer to a parklet. From my recollection, a parklet is a small seating area that's alongside the sidewalk that takes up a former parking space alongside a business. Is that what the town is defining a parklet as?
Yeah, all all the approvals for our temporary land use permits for the parklets in the public right of way all had a site plan that showed maximum width of 8 feet from the curb.
Okay. So when you mentioned the 8 feet size for the parking space, is the size concurrent with Church Street and Hearts and any of the other parklets? Are they all 8 foot in width?
They're all approximately 8 feet. I can't, 8 feet plus or minus. There's some of them might extend a little bit in or out because of the type of barrier they use, but yes, generally 8 feet.
Okay. So I guess I'm kind of confused, and maybe I kind of like an explanation of, when the parklet so-called went up on Church, and most, not in a cul-de-sac area, but in the one-way area, that street. When that transpired, was it originally started off as a parklet size, or did they automatically take half the street as they have right now?
I can't tell you all the history. I know that we looked at some pictures here recently, and I believe that they did start out with some smaller tents initially, and I cannot tell you at what point the 20-foot wide tents were erected, but they've been there the majority of the 2 years. And I think what is unique here is that it's really the only street that we made one way. Other ones like Pete's on Linda Mesa is less than 8 feet. 2 lanes of traffic was maintained there, but this was really the first one, and maybe in an abundance of caution in this one, we initially thought that maybe one way would be safer. We have learned to experience that you can have 2-way. It's worked fine on Linda Mesa. But I think because of this circumstance where there was this excess right of way there, because we had one way, over time it got gobbled up and incorporated into the parklets. It really wasn't possible to do that elsewhere because it really would cut off traffic lanes.
And I think that, a lot of times too, we've been dealing with a situation with the close down and all that. So with COVID, I mean, obviously in a pandemic, trying to accommodate, it's easy to see how that can kind of grow and evolve and is something different. But if a business isn't compliant with the guidelines that we've put in place, and what actions do we plan on? I know in the past is one thing. Let's talk about from this day moving forward. What do we plan on putting into place to make sure that these actions of these businesses are in compliant with what we are defining as a parklet and the recommendations that we have? What are we doing?
So we will take our cue from the council's direction on that. Over the last year and a half since these parklets have been expanded, we've kind of let it be, just in the spirit of COVID and trying to help our businesses. But over the last 6 months, when traffic has gotten back to normal and pedestrian traffic as well, we started receiving the complaints, and especially the safety issue at the corner there, which again will need to be addressed regardless of whether the streets are opened up to 2-way traffic. But our recommendation is that they be modified to be 8 feet wide, and if that's the council's direction, and if you adopt that in the ordinance, we will enforce that beginning July 1st, when the new land use permits go into effect. We will enforce that. The safety issue, we will continue to enforce that proactively now.
I just, from what I hear and the feedback that I get is concise, consistent direction to the businesses. And I would hope that moving forward that we do give them that, what they're looking for is to have that concise, consistent type of, foundation for them, and to be very clear on what our expectations are. So on Church Street, would you say, and I'm not just saying Church Street because I don't want to feel like I'm picking on them, but I want to say that moving forward, if somebody else comes up to us and says, we'd love to have a parklet out there until next year, this is the type of information that we're giving them moving forward. How are we showing them that we are going to stay and make them, in quote enforcement? How many letters do they have to get
how many times do they have to get told you're in violation before we actually revoke the opportunity for them to have a parklet or ensue fines or whatever else it may be?
Yeah, well, we really take strides to work proactively with our business community, and we don't typically come down heavy-handed to begin with. And so, yeah, it usually does start with usually starts with a conversation out there, face to face, followed up by a letter, and then if necessary, followed up by a second letter. But since they are in the public right of way, this happened with Kick and Mule. Since they are in the public right of way, the town does ultimately have the ability to just go out and remove that ourselves. And so if it came down to that, that's what we have done and we could do.
And that's the direction you're looking for from us this evening, is what your grounds are to stand on and moving forward. Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, it really, if you adopt the ordinance as recommended and we go to two-way traffic, then those have to be 8 feet to be safe for that street.
Okay, thank you, David.
And if I might, just to amplify on what Dave is saying, regardless of the direction that the town council is providing this evening, two-way, one-way, we will be working with the restaurateurs to ensure that there's adequate sight distance and that there's safety. So the safety issue is decoupled from the policy direction of one-way or two-way.
Right, and tied to that point, I guess what I'm asking though is that not just what council is saying, but obviously it's from a safety perspective.
Correct.
But from your seat, I would love to see clear, concise, and consistent direction to them moving forward, so there isn't an opportunity to keep coming back. That's just what I keep seeing.
Okay, let's go to Councilmember Stepper.
Okay, good. I'm off mute. So thank you. I wanted to ask a couple of questions. I'm trying to get it down to 2 or 3 questions. The first one, there's no question that if there's a danger situation, no matter what it is, what we use Danville Connect and everything else for sidewalks and streets, that needs to be addressed. It's almost not a part of this conversation. But I am concerned about how we measure that, because I've been hearing some anecdotal stories that, whether it's from my neighbors or from the town, that don't reflect on a real look at what the one way is, and what the advantages and disadvantages of keeping that street one way for 6 more months. We have almost 3 years coming up at the end of this year of being in the situation with the parklets, and yet so how would you measure when you say danger? Because we're always telling people these are safe, because nobody's out there. We're putting out barricades and doing those things, and we try to take those steps. So how would you measure for the example, the site, which is apparently too short over at Albatross? So how do you go ahead and look for what situations have to be addressed immediately versus those that could wait till we make final decisions here?
Sure. Well, we have something in our ordinances called our site distance triangle. And this applies to all corners throughout town. And there's a way that's measured. It's a 25-foot extension of the curb, kind of a radius of the curb, and then connecting that with a triangle. And anything within that site distance triangle needs to be below a certain height, so as not to block visibility of a vehicle pulling up to that stop sign, or not being able to see cars or pedestrians coming. And the Albatross enclosure violates that fairly significantly.
Okay, so I understand we're going to address that regardless. Right. And the second question has to do with the time we've had to look at this. So we looked at this at a study session, but we didn't look at Church Street details. We didn't have these measurements that you've given us today, or the parklet information. So tell me how much time people in the business community, because there are a lot of them in our audience I see today, have to make a final, we understand what your recommendation is here tonight, and we'll get more questions and answers on that. But as if they have only just seen this like we as a council have, and yet this is the first reading, the permits go till July 1st. So is there a little more time for them to sit down and make a final decision of how to restructure these tents, et cetera, or cover the cost of the tents through our grant? And that's kind of two separate questions. I don't know if that's two different people want to answer that.
Yeah, maybe I can interject just for a second to expand on Karen's, because I think the issue wait, who's feedback there? Somebody's got another device. David, maybe you can explain in answering on the first part of Karen's question about timing. The fact is staff has met with those two affected property owners. Maybe you can share that when, how, what, when, and where.
And how long?
Sure. So as per, our requirements for any public hearing, the notices went out to all of the holders of land use permits for the parklets about 10 days ago. So that just noticed them of the public hearing. The staff report and recommendations were not available until late last week. The same time that the council gets the reports, they're available to the public. We can't give the reports to the public before they're available to the town council members. And then yesterday we met out there with Darren Matt, who's the owner of Cocina Hermanos and Harvest, and Marasa, who's the owner of Albatross. And we had long discussion about different options. And so, there was a lot of dialogue. As of this afternoon, I just, for your deliberation, I received a call from Marasa, and she indicated that she was ordering an 8-foot wide tent. She didn't want to modify what she has out there because it would look chopped up, and it wasn't the look she wanted. So I think that side of it sounds like we are in agreement. And I would probably, maybe Rob, you can weigh in. I'm not sure what latitude we have to talk about this more during the second reading in 2 weeks and adding any more provisions. I know that after approval of the second reading, it takes 30 days for the ordinance to go into effect, and we need to get that to go into effect prior to July 1st. Rob?
Yeah, if you approve the first reading tonight, you cannot amend it at the second reading without going back and starting over again, which pushes back the effective date in the 30 days thereafter. So trying to think, if you did a first reading on the 17th, you come back June 3rd, you'd have a couple of day window at the start of July where you would not, none of these folks would have valid permits. But the short answer is first reading is where you make changes. Second reading is simply a consent calendar item where you don't make further changes.
And the not valid permits, that has liability issues. Is that what you're saying, Rob? We've got 3 days there.
Yeah, and frankly, something I hadn't thought about until we started this discussion is, to the extent that any of these folks are using a space that's larger than what planning approved. So for instance, if we approved an 8-foot wide parklet and they're using 20 feet, the ability to serve alcohol in the streets tied to what the planning division approved. And therefore, the right under the ABC laws to serve alcohol out in those seats is tied to what planning approved.
Okay, that's a different topic.
It is, but the point is, they potentially they have issues if they're not complying with what planning approved, and it's complicated by the fact that we have cut folks slack during the pandemic. So it's a little.
Okay, so let me ask a clarification, and maybe it's of David Crumpton on the size. So it seems that you have given us a recommendation tonight of 8 by 72. So there is a difference in the length of the tent. Is that correct?
Well, the recommendation shows 8 by 50. I believe that the current ones are more like 8 by 72. So they'd be narrower and a little bit shorter. And that would pull them
sorry, that's not what mine says. Mine says the 50 by 8, and then the second one that said recommended was 8 by 72.
It's the opposite written in there. It was 8 by 72. That's the original. Yeah.
Okay, so.
Was the original. No question. First approval was for an 8-foot wide by 72 feet. And now the approval recommendation for the site distance in those is 8 by 50.
Okay, I did mix those up. Thank you, Mayor, for clarifying that. So back to the time period available, and because we ran into this before, I thought we wouldn't run into it starting in April, but we have again that 30-day thing that goes just 3 days past the reading. So I think the question I have is, if we say do this and it causes extensive costs for one or both of these people, because we're not talking about something that we know is going to be long-term. Every city's changing parklets all the time still. So the question is, if it were only 6 months, how much cost can you incur? And is there a grant to help that, irregardless of whether you already had a grant to put your parklet up originally? Is there such a grant still available funds?
I'm going to suggest Jill answer that question, and also she can maybe give you some updated information from the fire district from a meeting she had today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, the Forward Focus grant did in fact cover up to $5,000 for the weather type of conditions. So whether someone wanted to choose to purchase a tent, heat lamps, it was up to the discretion of the businesses. The businesses on Long Church Street have used their grant to the full amount that was authorized by the town council. Also, that grant program has closed. We closed it because we were getting less people that were submitting grants, and we wanted to look at opportunities to do something different with the funding, which we were intending to bring back to the council at a later date. So we have nothing for you at this moment. But any changes to something like that, if it's the council's desire to offer additional funding, that would be something that would have to be discussed at a future meeting. And this is where I'll defer to Rob as to whether or not that particular grant program could be reopened and funding amounts could be increased, or if we would need to do a separate process in terms of how this funding would be used. Because originally we took the funding for this program from our contingency funds, but then when we learned about receiving funds through ARPA program, we are going to be using what we have exhausted for this particular program through that reimbursement process for ARPA funds. So I am not necessarily 100% sure on if there's any other strings attached that we need to be aware of with authorizing more funding for the restaurants to be able to do something. And then secondly, I would like to bring up, we were contacted by fire late yesterday about having a discussion with all their jurisdictions in which they serve to talk now about all these parklets, because now they've extended the life of what they've considered temporary. And as the health orders have changed and capacity has now returned to 100%, they are in a position of wanting to be able to inspect them, because they also as well look to defer that during the pandemic. Some of the safety and compliance checks that they would normally do for a tent or a canopy type structure. So they have asked to meet with the town and talk about a phasing plan to be able to kind of revisit the parklets that are in place, or sorry, I should mention any outdoor expanded area that is in place, whether it's on private property or if it's in the street, to really evaluate the conditions of the tents, to see whether some of the improvements that have been made over the past 2 years run a risk or a safety factor, and kind of really look to kind of reset those, and now look at trying to reestablish or restart a permit. So meaning that they would kind of want to reset those permits based on if they were able to go out and see if a particular tent or canopy is fine in those conditions, or if they met in the criteria. So I had a nice conversation with one of the district employees about this, and they've already met with San Ramon and already proceeding the same thing with San Ramon. So it really, along with what we kind of have provided in the staff report in terms of the direction, it's our intent to kind of do a recheck on these as we reestablish these permits, just to double check and make sure if there is anything, that we're going to be working with the businesses to try and reset it. So we'll be starting that conversation as well. And one of the things that was interesting that I did learn, and again, I don't have all the facts because we haven't had an in-depth conversation about this, was that under state law, tents and canopies are considered temporary structures, and they're only allowed to be up for a 6-month period. After which point they're not, they're not considered temporary anymore. And this is more so because these types of structures are not necessarily intended to kind of have this type of a duration, for these types of uses. So the fire district that's how they kind of look at them when they look at the, these type of structures being put up, as really on a limited time basis. So that's a conversation that has to be kind of discussed as to whether or not, with that reset, does it now become a 6-month period? And then let's say, for example, we start that in July and we ended at January 3rd. If we have in the future more of a desire to kind of keep the parklets continuing in their current form, is that something that is then at that time revisited to see whether or not they could be extended? These are things we don't know. We would need more time from that standpoint to kind of do that investigation. But it basically says, kind of gives us the caution of that we're going to need to start really reevaluating these from a safety perspective, kind of as we're coming out of the pandemic, as the health orders have lifted, because the rules need to now necessarily kind of come back in and apply so that we're making sure that we're maintaining safety on all levels.
Okay, Jill, I'll leave that to other people. That's a new topic entirely. I want to ask you about the parklets with respect to the tents that are up throughout our town and that are 8 feet wide based upon the size of a parking spot. I just wanted to clarify because many of them do have the feet of the tent on the other side of the sidewalk, which leaves the sidewalk clear for people to walk between their business and their parklet. So that's still going to remain okay?
This again is a discussion we will be having with the fire district and as well as our building official as we kind of look at that. So I don't necessarily have an answer for you at this moment.
Okay, well, I took pictures of about 3 or 4 of those yesterday. So that's, I think before somebody is asked to put a lot of money into a change. So those are good things to have on your plate for clarification. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Karen.
If I can, Mr. Mayor,
yes,
before we
Rob.
move on, if I can just add on to what Jill was talking about with use of the funds. I mean, we would have to look at questions about, again, as Jill indicated, we switched out sort of the sources of those funds we were using when we closed out the program. So we would have to look at that before we could answer you or any merchant whether we could redo that. And the other thing to remember is if we did it, when we did it initially, it was open to all businesses for pandemic related expenses. And that was in part to make sure that we weren't doing any gift of public funds. So before we would bring anything back to council, we'd have to sort of explore how to do that in a way that lived up to those same standards. So they're good questions. We don't have great answers for you tonight.
But largely, before we go to council member or vice mayor Storr, largely though, David and Rob, that what we're really talking about is just one street. Largely all the other businesses other than 2 business owners that are located on Church Street all have stayed generally within the original parameters, the 8 foot, that's it. These are the only ones that got larger. One of those businesses already said that they agreed they're going to move it back. They do have to deal with the sight line and they're going to order the tent and do it. We've also, for the record, have we not done the 6-month increment, which helped us, as Jill pointed out, for that temporary use? Are those true statements? I mean, that's helped us on that, where if we can only do a 6-month, we've been doing these as 6-month extensions.
Yeah, I'd have to, again, maybe defer to Rob. We have basically approved these for about 6 months. And so they've had to be renewed each time. Whether or not that legally resets the clock as making them temporary over and over again, that would be a question.
Yeah, I think the temporary part that Jill talked about in terms of what the fire code may say is, I mean, that's different. Again, that's news as of this afternoon, so I don't have an answer. the fact that the council has chosen to extend these on 6 months increments. I mean, we've been very careful every time in the ordinance to say it doesn't create any vested rights beyond the 6 months that you're extending it. And that's kind of why we've done that. I mean, I think we've all been unclear about when the pandemic's going to end and when things will return to normal. So you so far have taken these in 6 month chunks.
So the other part of that question I asked was that it really gets down to one business owner that would be affected by what's proposed. All that's being proposed, if they stay within the 8 feet, it gets down to one. Is that correct, David?
Yes, at this point, I believe it comes down to one business owner that owns 2 restaurants. So it would be both Casino Hermanos and Harvest.
Okay, great.
And
Vice Mayor
Arnrich,
oh, yes.
If I can add too, we have also kind of discussed options that, there would be a little bit of a loss of seating by doing that. But both of these properties have the ability also to extend their parklet onto Harts, which then they could regain some of that seating.
Yes. Yeah, perfect. They can do the 8 foot there. Vice Mayor Storr.
Yeah, thank you. And that, Jill, thanks. That was my question. So it looks to me like Albatross can certainly do an 8-foot parklet on the railroad. And I'm guessing that Darren can do one on Harts as well. Even though the street seems like it narrows there a bit, it still works. So that's always an option that's still on the table, and we approved that long ago. And then as far as, look, I think it's a very creative way of looking at this, and I appreciate the flexibility and thinking. If we were to look at these tents that are already up in place, and I actually don't care how we got here, we're here, and now we're looking at sort of cleaning this up a little bit. But couldn't they use their 20-foot tents? And I think it works on Casino Hermanos a little bit better than Albatross, but they can move their tents closer to their building over the sidewalk and still make the 20-foot tents work.
None of that would work in a way that would allow for two-way traffic. And so Casino Hermanos has moved their 20-foot fence back all the way over the sidewalk and to the edge of their building. But that means they're still extending 14 feet out into the right of way, and we can only allow 8. Albatross has a hardship of even doing that because there are street trees there that are in the way, so she just can't slide it over and make that work that way. Across the street on the east, Harvest has parklets that are set up with 8-foot fence sections. They could easily be modified to, instead of being 16 feet wide out into the street, take one of those away and you're only 8 feet off the curb, and realign the rest of the fence sections. He's also got a large tent. I believe that tent, however, could be moved over the sidewalk and even further over the pre-existing outdoor seating area along the left side of Harvest, up towards the wall, and probably get to that 8 feet extension. So I think that restaurant could get to 8 feet without much additional expense.
Okay, it sounds like, look, maybe I should know more about tents than I do, but it sounds like a tent can actually be sort of either removed, restructured, or made a little smaller. You can't make it bigger, but they might be able to make them smaller. And the only reason I say this is, look, we got 7 months left till we get to January 3rd or so. And
so your question here, that's common.
It sounds like the tents can be accommodated. The ones that are existing can be relocated and maybe adapted in place, so people don't have to actually spend more money on tents.
The only existing tent that I believe can be moved to meet the 8-foot extension limitation would be Harvest. The other two, the Albatross and Casino Hermano, would still extend 14 feet out on the street, even they moved it to the back of the sidewalk.
Okay, and it certainly seems like the businesses that we're working with have been accommodating, and they seem like Albatross Casino Hermanos has already moved their parklets. But when we look at those parklets, has anybody indicated that they may come in with something a more permanent in nature?
Well, at this point, we've only reviewed and approved one, and that's Primo's. I suspect, and I've talked to several, I suspect they're kind of waiting to see what happens. And, they probably want to, if they know that they're going to lose their outdoor seating unless they come up, with a permanent design that, is acceptable to the town. I think they're kind of waiting to see when that time is going to be.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then Rob, any idea in the future when this emergency ordinance can be lifted? Any discussions that you're hearing?
Well, remember that initially when staff was approving these things before we had taken to council, it was because of the limitation on indoor seating.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason the council's having to approve these is because the state allows full indoor seating. I mean, that's why they're coming back to you. So the fact that we still have our emergency declaration in place, as does the state, are kind of irrelevant to that issue. You certainly heard testimony at the last meeting from some of the restaurant owners about folks being reluctant to go back indoors, but strictly from the zoning perspective, they are allowed to have 100% occupancy indoors. So the emergency declaration isn't really germane to the discussion tonight.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Dave, it seems to be that the real purpose that we've tried all along, although we get focused on one business each time we talk about this, our ordinance was intended to be fair and equal access to all our businesses, not just downtown, throughout the town of Danville, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we have little different standards for the DVD area as opposed to some of our standalone shopping centers. But any district in downtown that allows for off-site parking is uniform across the board in what the on-site versus off-site parking requirements are and what the off-site parking fees are based on the type of use in the building.
So the bottom line is that the rules for those who wanted parklets on streets, it was all the same rule in every case. But we do have, we keep focusing, it seems, on a business or two businesses that didn't follow that rule.
The initial intent, the initial approvals were basically saying that, pre-COVID, you had rights to X number of interior seats and X number of exterior seats. Whatever that total is, take it outside and spread it out. So you have the same number of seats that you had previously, indoor plus outdoor. And so as the health orders lifted and now they're able to go back indoors with 100% of their seating and still have the expanded outdoor seating. Now they have up to 200% of the parking or the seating numbers that they had pre-pandemic, and that would result in a large off-site parking lieu fee unless we waive or we suspend that fee, which is what this ordinance would do.
So thank you for that. So in a way, we're slightly disrupted for those who have paid fees and don't have parklets. There's a slight economic imbalance. Some are getting, quote, a free ride, others aren't. But we're not really talking about that, I guess, this time per se.
On a temporary basis, that would be true.
Okay. Any other questions, Councilmember Fong?
Yeah, thank you. Question I have is, what's before us is to restore two-way street right there on Church Street. There were no parklets. It was a two-way street. Now we're going to have parklets and two-way streets. And with the growing traffic in downtown, do you believe that it meets all of our safety needs? Because it's like we've doubled the number of, or potentially double the number of cars. We now have the parklets that are there. And I worry that maybe the street is just too narrow to accommodate all. So do we have are we too accommodating versus what we really need to, I guess, advocate, which is reasonableness for cyclists, walkers, motorists, and our businesses?
Yeah, so the what we're recommending on Church Street would basically take us back to where we were pre-pandemic, except that where there were cars parked along the south side of Church, there would be parklets instead. So the actual roadway width with a 212-foot wide travel lanes and the 8-foot parking on the north side would be the same. And the cars that would have been on the south side are now parklets.
Great. No, that clarifies a lot for me. Second question I have is, if a business decides, okay, it's going to be a two-way street, I'm going to take my parklets down, and now I'm going to go through that land use permit process for permanent investment into a parklet. And I believe that's already been asked by several, and I think there's been several comments. But are we prepared to accept that application tomorrow and be able to act on it? Or is it going to take some time for us to come up with the right set of rules? Because it sounds like we're going to need to make sure the fire is included in these discussions as we create the right rules going forward. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to appreciate what's that timeline look like if one decides, hey, it's time to invest in a permanent parklet, sure, and I'm going to go through that process of investing dollars to apply for that permit.
Sure. Well, every restaurant has different characteristics. Some have on-site areas where they can expand their outdoor seating. Maybe they didn't do it because they didn't want to pay for additional parking fees or had to have a larger area. Some don't have any on-site areas, and the only place they can do it is in the public right-of-way. So for those that have the ability to do it on site right now, we are ready to accept an application and process it, as quickly as we can. Primos is an example of one that has been submitted and reviewed and approved. That one was pretty extensive because there was also a remodel of the front facade of the building, and it had to go through our design review board. But typically they would be fairly quick review. We also, I think, in conjunction with our downtown master plan, and maybe some of the things that might come out of that plan, we probably also want to look at some guidelines for how permanent parklet structures might look where they are able to be accommodated right now on private property.
So just to be clear, there is no legal process at this point in time for a private business to take over a public street other than through what this ordinance allows and has allowed on a temporary basis. And we can't confuse those subjects. They have no relationship to each other. And you can't there's the gift of public funds, it's taxpayer property, on and on and on. So what David has answered, to be clear, because when you say parklet, that means using a parking place that's owned by the public. So if you're talking about outdoor dining, which is really what parklets were for, David's talking about all businesses have the right to come in and request more outdoor dining, and we have a speedy process of how to go about that. And there are an appropriate set of conditions, approvals, and fees. And to this point, only one has been approved. Others have come in and talked. Some have found out, since they don't own the property, their landlords won't let them do that, or they want to collect more rent, etc. But parklets is there is no process to allow parklets. And if that means a public parking place to be used by a private business other than on a temporary basis, that's not part of our discussion nor this ordinance. So any other questions before we open the public? Okay, Dave, you might be frozen, and I know you can sit still, but your voice was going in and out. So I apologize if your screen looks like it's frozen up. So I'm just going to give you a heads up. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and open up the public hearing, and we love to hear your comments. And again, we really appreciate from Judy Lloyd, the CEO of the Danville Area Chamber of Commerce, that we did receive a written comment supporting the ordinance with some specific comments, also from Darren Matt from Kachina Harmonos and Albatross doing that. So at this time, please use the virtual raise hand feature in Zoom, and we will call on you. And our first person, speaking of Darren Matt, welcome. Marie will pull you over, and we look forward to your comments. Darren, welcome back. Darren, can you unmute there and we can hear you?
Oh, sorry about that.
There you go.
Mayor,
Perfect. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I kind of feel like Groundhog's Day here, and I'm sure you're all sick of hearing me talk about this stuff. I think after I'm going to kind of ditch my prepared topics. I think after hearing everything, you know, all that us as business owners have been looking for here is just, you know, clarity and direction. And to answer Renee's question, the reason Church Street closed is because when Church Court was approved by town staff actually came to Albatross and Hermanas and said, we're going to close that lane of traffic so that there's no incoming traffic into Church Court. So that's kind of the background on that. We didn't actually ask for that. We were, you know, we've worked in good faith to design these parklets, to invest in them. Anytime the town staff has come to me, I know I can speak for myself on safety or design concerns. They've been addressed almost immediately. That slide that was showing the Hermanas parklet over all the way was actually a little bit dated because since being requested, we moved it in. I think the biggest thing on all of this that I'm hearing is just some clear direction from the town staff on how we can get this to permanent. I think that I know, again, I speak for myself. I'm willing to invest the money to make a permanent parklet that is safe, that has attractive design aesthetics, and that is something that the community can be proud of. But I just don't have any direction. And so we've kind of been waiting, you know, on this revised downtown master plan. I would just encourage, you know, the town staff and the council to adopt, you know, whatever those recommendations are from the consultant as soon as possible so that, you know, we can all kind of get past this temporary thing. I think we're all sick of talking about tents and 6-month extensions and everything. And we just kind of want to look forward to, you know, what the more permanent basis looks like for this. So again, I appreciate the town's leadership on all of this stuff. I think Danville is more lively now than it's ever been. And I think the community appreciates it. And I'm certainly hopeful that, you know, that this is something that we can make permanent sooner than later for those businesses that want to participate. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Darren. And we really appreciate all your efforts too. Our next speaker is Brittany Doyle Riley, who is also with the Chamber of Commerce and a local business owner here. Brittany, welcome back.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, council members. As Mayor Arnrich said, I'm Brittany Doyle Riley, attorney here at Doyle Claim, but I'm here tonight in my capacity as chair of the Economic Development Committee for the Danville Area Chamber. I hope you all had the opportunity to read our letter. Like Darren, after hearing the conversation, I'm going to kind of scrap what I was going to go through, which was just to kind of highlight some of those critical points. You know, I think the biggest point here is that, you know, it's clear this discussion has been going on for about a month. We were looped in on Friday. We'd love to open those lines of communication so that we can come up with tangible solutions. You're well aware by now we're in full support of extending these parklets. We're so appreciative of the town continuing to do that. I think a critical point to keep in mind is that although you see packed local restaurants, they're dealing with labor shortages, increased labor costs, increased food costs, and supply chain issues. Pandemic is not over for them, so these parklets really have been and continue to be a lifeline. So we have this paradigm, right? We have safety versus the threat of kind of this disproportionate economic impact on a small number of businesses at the 11th hour. So the chamber set out to try to figure out what can we do to address that. As Jill, Ty, and Dave mentioned, a meeting took place. The group got together, discussed adjustments that could be made to existing parklets to make them safer for this maybe last, we don't know, 6-month stretch. This kind of solution will be such a huge relief to our businesses. That's especially true when you think about the brevity of the proposed extension. It's especially true when you juxtapose that to the magnitude of the investments made by these businesses. Robert, you mentioned you don't know how these tents work. We have one in our driveway. I'll tell you, they are expensive. They are hard to move. It's not a flippant thing, a thing that you can say flippantly, oh, let's just move them over sideways. You know, you have to order new tents, you have to order new furniture, everything. So please take that into account when you're considering this 6-month extension. I loved what Renee said about the, let's have clear, concise, and consistent direction to these businesses. That's music to our ears. We couldn't agree more. Let's open the lines of communication, and let's work together to implement a smart solution. So thank you all for your support. We're so grateful to be working with you on this and, stimulating our local economy, which is so important in these economic times that are so uncertain for all of us. So thank you.
Brittany, thank you again so much. And just to make sure that while we all want to talk about permanent parklets, that's not what's before us tonight. What's before us is to whether we should extend the temporary parklets for 6 months. And part of that is to make sure, and it's only one business owner now, unfortunately, it gets down to, is to make sure that they stay within the 8 feet of the approvals, and they have options to add other parklets, temporary parklets during this period of time. Our next speaker is Michelle Landis. Wow, Michelle, welcome.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Okay, I am Michelle Landis. My husband Jerry and I own 1/3 of the building on the corner of Hearts and Church, 295 Hearts Avenue, where Trek bicycles are, and Fitnatics, a personal gym. And our tenants have been so affected by this shutdown of parking and the lane of Church Street. I'm glad you guys are finally taking this on. I can't believe it's gone on this long, that lane has been shut down, and 2 restaurants have the use of the lane that is a public street. It's, the bike shop especially needs to have parking close by for their clients to load and unload bicycles. And it's not only very little parking there, across the street where Harvest is as well, you have no access to the public parking lot. You got to, go around and try and get back and bring your bike in, or haul your bike that doesn't roll in. I totally understand that the parklets were put in place during the shutdown, and I sympathize with the restaurants, but that ordinance no longer exists. They can do indoor dining. And I feel like especially Church Street and the other parklets have had a very negative effect on the other retail businesses where customers have a lack of parking, which has always been an issue in downtown Danville since my husband and I both had businesses down there. I just feel that, for one thing, it should be opened up. I think it should be opened up totally. So, the restaurants have all this extra space. Our tenants pay the same amount of rent as the restaurants do, I would guess. And they don't have extra space to use where they take up public space, and are actually being hurt by the fact that they don't have that space. So that's our thoughts on it. We really want to support our tenants and keep them as tenants. We don't need more empty spaces in Danville. And as property owners, we sure don't want empty spaces. Thank you.
Great, Michelle, thank you so much for joining us. It's nice to hear from you. Haven't seen you in a while, so thank you. Our next speaker is Jim Heiser. Jim, welcome back. Jim, if you can unmute, then we could hear you. Jim, are you able to unmute? We're allowing you to speak. Jim, I'm going to come back to you if you can sort of work on that.
Is it working now?
There you go. You got it. Welcome, Jim.
We are also, my wife and I have been residents of Danville for 40 years, and we live on 767 Dolphin Drive in Danville. And we, along with Jerry and Michelle, are part owners of the bike store. And we've seen the problems of traffic, and almost saw a head-on collision once where somebody was pulling in there, and to allow a a street that is supposed to go in both directions and not allow it, it seems ridiculous. And I also wonder if the fire districts or is going to put some kind of restriction on these parklets, because I agree with Michelle entirely that if the two restaurants across the street from our building, we would like to see both of those parklets moved over to Railroad or to Harts Avenue and open up that street so that it supports our retail businesses. Thank you.
Great, Jim. Thank you for your comments. Okay, this will take us now to Kiva Dodd. Kevin, welcome back. And Marie, I think Kiva was there first. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Kiva, there you go. Welcome.
Well, great. Thank you. And thank you, council members and Mayor Arnich. I really appreciate Renee speaking about clarity and consistency. That's really what we've been looking for quite some time. I did want to address a couple of things about Church Street. You know, I am on the street, and that is my corner. So the one-way street actually has really benefited the safety of that corner. We no longer have people going down Church Street trying to turn left on Harts Avenue. That's super important. The second thing is that you have your traffic coming out of Church Street and allows people to make a left-hand turn onto Harts Avenue, which is dangerous. It seems to me that would make more sense to make that street one way going into the village parking area. And it would also make more sense to keep Church Street as a one-way street widened if you pull back the parklets so that there is an easier time to park on that street, because those parking spaces are very difficult to navigate with the outlets on it and the trees there. You know, it's just a fundamentally difficult parking situation. In regards to the bike shop and their needs, I will tell you that for 2 years, they have had their front door closed with only access onto Church Street. So I feel that, you know, where they may have had their business affected for the service portion of it, they haven't been on the main part of the street that is open to the public. So that may have something to do with the situation there also. I think that that we have plenty of parking in Danville. I think there's 750 free parking spaces in Danville. I just think that if you have to walk a block, that's a pretty good thing in Danville. Anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate all your efforts in making this a really smooth transition as we hopefully head out of the pandemic.
Great, Kiva, thank you for your comments so much. And particularly thank you noting the number of free parking places. Remember, it's free parking in Danville. So next we have David Graham. David, welcome. Look forward to your comments.
Hello, thank you for having this meeting. I am one of the members of LGH, Landis, Graham, and Heinzer. I'm a 1/3 owner of the property on Church Street. I can't agree with the last speaker. The reason probably the front door is closed on the bike shop is because of theft. So Church Street is a very narrow street. I just wonder what the town council thinks that if we closed the bike shop and opened a restaurant and then put in an 8-foot parklet, would anybody be able to get down that street? I'm worried about fire, people coming down the street. I am concerned about our tenants. Their business has dropped somewhat because there's no longer exposure from people taking left-hand turns off of Railroad. We rented that spot because it had great exposure. Personally, I think the parklets should disappear from Danville. We're now in an endemic. We're not in a pandemic. I've been a resident of Danville since 1973. I owned a business here. I'm a retired dentist after 40 years in Danville. I really think I'm glad you're concerned about Church Street. I think you need to take all options into consideration. Thank you very much.
Great, David. Thank you. And nice to hear from you. Is there anybody else here that's an attendee would like to address the council? If so, please raise your virtual Zoom hand and we'll call on you. Okay, last chance. I do not see any. So at this time, we will close the public hearing and we'll bring it back to the council. And David, I was keeping notes. Is there any specific question that you want to answer or address that we heard from any of our speakers, from Darren, Brittany, Michelle, Jim, Kiva, David, or Graham?
Mayor, I didn't hear any specific questions. I heard, opinion comments and opinions.
Yeah. Okay.
Be happy to answer any questions that you.
Great. I didn't hear any specific questions, but I heard a lot of ideas and things like that. So the item is now back to the council to either ask questions or offer your direction on the ordinance that's before us. Vice Mayor Storr.
Thank you. When we sat down 2+ years ago and we were in an emergency meeting trying to figure out what COVID was going to do with us, we thought, Jesus, we're going to have a $3, $5, or $7 million shortfall here where we didn't know how to backfill. Money was really going to be tight. Our businesses were closing. They couldn't eat indoors. And we came up with this wonderful concept of a parklet. And it did exactly what it was meant to do. And that was to keep our businesses in business. And they're still there today. And they did survive. Now, albeit very, very difficult, 2 years for restaurants, retail, service. You pick a group and they struggled. So the parklets were meant to have a positive impact on business revenues, and God bless them, it worked. And I'm really happy that as a council and a community and a staff, we supported downtown parklets. Well, we've got a parklet now that is 20 foot wide. If I knew I could get support, I would say, look, for the next 7 months, just leave it the way it is. The businesses are fine. The street works. We haven't had any impacts on the street. And I would say, look, at this point, it makes a lot of sense not to have anybody spend additional monies for the next 7 months. But I don't know if I get traction on that. That's my thoughts. And my second part of this would be, look, if we're not going to just let this go, because we have let it go now for 2 years and 2.5 months or so, if we're not going to let it go, then and the businesses seem like they're complying. I think what David Crompton and Jill did is brilliant. They found a very happy medium that is doable. I'm not crazy about changing this right now because we're so far down the road and there's some light at the end of the tunnel. And if these businesses, and I certainly would suggest this, if you want to do something more permanent, hurry, because this thing is ending on January 3rd. Once again, I think the right thing to do here is a win-win for everyone. If I can't get the traction on this council to say, we're good where we're at, just let it go, then I would say that I would certainly support staff's ideas of changing this to an 8 foot by 50 foot tents, the outdoor seating. And one of the things I would also mention, and I've heard it from a number of people from the chamber, they didn't feel like they were really involved in the initial conversations on this. And my suggestion would be, let's at least bring the chamber in, because if we say to the chamber, we want you to be a partner, then I think we should really include them in every discussion that we have that has anything to do with the downtown. And then, as lucky as we are in May when we go through our budgets, I think we could look at those forward focus funds and try to figure out a good direction. And maybe the downtown could certainly be the recipient of this. So my two thoughts would be, I like the idea of making it 8 foot by 50, not as much as I like the idea of just leaving it the way it is. And I can go both ways in this, but I lean towards B a lot.
Great. Robert, thank you for that. I was just going to add real quick, cut to the chase on my side. I support without hesitation to extend this to January 3rd, period. I support doing the staff recommendation. I support our other businesses who need this one street. And remember, it's an ordinance for the whole town, not just one business, even though I happen to love and eat a lot at one of the restaurants, a lot. And I do trade off. But the fact is, we've heard from so many businesses, and let's remind ourselves, the reason why we came up with this, the other two restaurants, a restaurant owner begged us to open that street up. It's hurting their business. So let's just keep it in mind. Maybe this is a fair way to move forward. Councilmember Stepper.
Okay, thank you. I could support that, Robert, letting the 7 months. I hate to see the amount of costs and things that we're going to create here unless we have a way to help offset that. And that was made pretty clear in the letter that was written to us that we received, I think, today. Yeah. The other alternative, if we think because we can't tell 6 months ahead, I think the downtown master plan is supposed to come next meeting, May 17th. So hopefully all these people will be back then too. But with respect to that, that might give people a chance to look longer term in what they're going to do over the next 6 months, which was a lot of the reason we extended them, because they didn't have that time to prepare. So I'm hoping that if that comes in with some very creative ideas, not that we'll resolve it right away, but at least they would know which direction they go. So I could either go with just keeping it like it is, because I don't see the huge danger for 6 more months that we're talking about with respect to anything except a line of sight, which is being taken care of, and also bringing those tents in and moving them to the building, which I had asked about earlier, and several of them are doing that. So I could either do that, or we can talk about if there's a way to help offset what the costs are that we're trying to incur for such a short time period out of an almost 3-year time period by we get to January 3rd. So thank you.
Councilmember Morgan.
Thank you. I appreciate all the comments from people calling in and everything, and taking all of that into consideration. I think another thing that the pandemic has done has given us all the opportunity to try to pivot as fast as possible to make sure that these businesses are successful. We've sat back and as a council, as a town, and let businesses expand beyond where they would have ever been able to expand prior to the pandemic. And I think that, was it Jim that mentioned that this is an endemic, not a pandemic, and we need to be cognizant of that. The other thing that's been brought up on several times is the fire department. With the consistency of change within what's happening, I think it's important that heaven forbid something does happen. I mean, our job as council members, as Brittany brought up, was the safety end of it and the economical impact. That's our job as well, is to make sure that we are maintaining that and watching out for our community. So that is a big concern of mine. Even though it was just brought up, I think it's something that we need to definitely make sure that we are pivoting with that word again, in reference to what they suggest. I think that making it clear and concise, as I had mentioned 1,000 times over, what a parklet is. And if we let one business or two businesses, from my understanding, and if I guess I could ask Jill once again, is Albatross has ordered 8-foot tents and is willing to bring back that 20-foot back to an 8-foot. So they've already agreed to that, correct, Jill? Is that, I just wanted to clarify.
So we met with them yesterday to talk about different things. Her purchasing 8-foot tents is news to me. I mean, our recommendation would be to wait until we.
That would be. Oh, that was David that mentioned that.
Yeah, Jill, I haven't had a chance to talk to you this afternoon, I guess, but yeah, she called me directly this afternoon because we had talked about options about kind of chopping up her tent and being able to take off the ends and move the center portion further away. And she looked at that and said that would just be choppy, and she didn't want to go down that road. And she was ordering an 8-foot wide tent as of today. I cautioned her to make sure that it's fire retardant. It's going to meet the requirements of the fire department before she gets her final order in. But she's indicated that's where she's going.
So that's great. I mean, it shows that, how far out. I want to make sure that by July, obviously that's when we're talking about implementing this in the second reading. I just want to make sure that that's in there, that we define what a parklet is, that we give that clear definition so that we don't have another business come forward and ask to have a one-way street and 20-foot encroachment. And then we have to come back and say, no, we won't allow that. And then, well, you let it happen, it's kind of the mom and dad thing, right? Well, mom said no, so, we don't want that to happen. So I'd love to see a little bit more clarity in there given, and making sure that we include the verbiage that for the inspections, because this is never, it's been mentioned several times about the downtown master plan. And I just want to clarify that once again, is that this is not something that's happening in the next couple of months. This is something that is going to take time, and it's going to take time to implement. We are in the process of finding out information, and the information that we retrieve from that is what we will do moving forward. So saying that the parklets are a part of our downtown master plan at this point in time is way too premature to say. And I just wanted to make sure that we were clear on that. And I know, Noel, you had mentioned that as well, but I think that some of those were brought up as far as, safety concerns or parklets being part of the master plan. And so that's my recommendation. I think that we should stay consistent across the board.
Okay, so if I could just reiterate to make sure we're all clear in which way. One, you support the 6-month or 7-month extension until January 3rd, 2023. You support the staff proposal that's before us.
Yes.
But can you be a little more
specific?
Use your
okay.
word.
So I'm talking about clear and concise. Okay, so yes. So
what specifically is missing in the ordinance? Because the inspections, all of the requirements to meet fire, ABC, all that has actually always been in there. They're now coming into reinforce it. We're not making any changes in that. It's already there.
Well, but that's not in here either. So that's something that we need to make sure that everything is in compliance with that, and as well as the clarity stating the actual what defines a parklet, so that moving forward we have a clear and concise message to, if anybody wants to come to the town and say, I'd like a parklet, we have clear and concise language to give them on what a parklet is, size and width and depth.
David, what would you comment to? Do we need to add something specific, or sorry, that word, I'm going to come up with another one.
Yeah, we can certainly clarify that. I think that, what we have seen so far is that with each approval, we've approved a site plan that showed an 8-foot wide parklet. And it's just a matter of enforcement of these two that grew beyond the 8 feet. But we could certainly add, more of a definition in our letters that we're going to send out as part of our condition of approval to define, here's what we approved for, here's what we have applied for, here's what we're approving. And then I just want to add that, all the requirements about compliance with fire district requirements and others have always been in the conditions of approval, for 2 years. It's just a matter of now the fire district is not considering them temporary anymore and are getting interested in enforcing fire code issues.
Okay.
Because there have not been inspections. I mean, correct? I mean, Ty, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to amplify what Dave is saying because I'm hearing a lot of words about clear, concise, consistent, all really very good. And I think the reason why you don't find a simple definition of a parklet is because every frontage in front of every restaurant is slightly different. So how I would describe a parklet is how it's defined in the temporary land use permit that's issued to that particular restaurant. So to a question that the mayor asked at the very, very beginning of this hearing with regard to when it is that we've been interacting and communicating with our businesses, just to bring it back to Albatross, we have been involved with Albatross since fall of last year. I think our first communication was probably in October of 2021, followed by the end of the year, followed by the beginning of 2022. And the increments in time start to shorten. And so from a clear and concise standpoint, what we do each time is to point back to the temporary land use permit that we've issued, because understandably, it would be unfair to try and standardize it for all of the restaurants if they have nuances. So what we do is we consistently point back to the land use permits, and they define what the parklet is for that restaurant, if that helps.
I think there's also, if I could just interject, can somebody mute whoever has all that background noise? I think the confusion here is, from what we're hearing from the public, what they're asking for is clear and concise is not what we're talking about. They assume, and this is a separate discussion, that there will be permanent parklets somewhere down the road and they'll be part of this master plan. And our answer to that is, we don't know. We haven't seen it. It also has to go through a public process. Property owners, the taxpayers, all of the people involved, everybody involved has to have a say in that. We have to go through a process, and we are government. It does take a long time to do that. So we should not confuse what they're asking for, because that's not what we have the authority to do. That's before us. It's not in this ordinance. That's something we can't do. So,
okay, so
is there another question?
Just to clarify that then, so if I can. Wasn't that great? Okay, so then perhaps, so our clear and concise is different than from what I understand. So, but the failure to comply part is something that also, you know, if you don't do something about it, then people just feel like, well, you know, it's nothing's going to be done. They're just going to come out and smack me on the hand or slap me on the hand, and then I'm done. Maybe that's part of the definition as well, is what, you know, where do we do? The first notification, like David said, you go out, you talk to them, you write a letter in response to what was spoken, you reiterate what was talked about. Second opportunity, you know, how far in between is that? I mean, we have 6 months, but at the same time, you can't have people that are not complying with what we're asking them to do. 2 years ago, we asked people to come and get permits and to make it permanent. We have one that's going through with it. So I just think that that's a part of, if you don't clarify that, then there is no ground to stand on. David, code enforcement, whoever, can't say anything. So maybe that's something, David, is that something that we can do, is to have a little bit more direction on that, so that you have, as staff and code enforcement, have a little more leverage to make sure to see that these things are getting done, and we're not coming from October of 21 with the first interaction. And I'm not just talking about Albatross. I'm using as an example. Okay, so I hope they don't think I'm picking on. I'm not. So that we have an example moving forward, what we can and can't do.
Let's also jump in there ahead of Dave. You don't need to put it in here. It's in your zoning ordinance already, and that's what staff has been relying on. The zoning ordinance has pretty detailed procedures on how we go about modifying or revoking permits. And Dave mentioned earlier, we've previously revoked one of these temporary LUPs out in the street because there was a constant problem with them right there on Hearts. So we have that already. And to the second point, to amplify on something Ty said, if we have built into each of these approvals what the permitted size is, I think in general, the maximum depth is going to be 8 feet, because that's typically the width. But correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but for instance, Pete's Brass Rail is not 8 feet. It's less than, because that street is narrower. So I think your best bet, if you really feel you need to plug something in there that the depth of one of these on a street shall not exceed 8 feet, but I would be very reluctant to get into that because Dave and Andy have worked together on all these to figure out, given the specific street and the particular section of that street, what works and what's safe. So
no, I understand. And I agree. And I think that the 8 feet or less is a great opportunity for us to add that verbiage in there, so that we're clear, staff is clear, and it doesn't go back and forth. And anybody else that applies for possibly a parklet in the next, how many months from now, 8 months, that it's clear as well. That's just
okay. Can we go to
just real quick? Can we also say on there, to refer back to our previous ordinance, or refer to that ordinance in there, because I think a lot of people are not getting, they're not reading that part of it. They're not putting the two together. So if we could say, please refer to ordinance number, so that they have the opportunity to refer back to it, so that they know that also crossover, and it's kind of a layered process of the signed ordinance and everything else.
So let's see how the rest of the council feels. Let's go to Dave Fong, and then we'll go back to Karen Stone.
Thank you. And I've been very patient, but
yes, thank you.
This conversation has been very helpful. I think we all get it. And I think we're all pretty much saying the same thing, which is one, setting the right expectations now going forward. Two, making sure that we have enforcement, or we follow through for consistency, and not so much for clarity, unless clarity is part of that consistency and enforcement. And I would also agree that the town's traffic is getting worse, and it's only going to get even more worse as we proceed into summer. And thank you for the businesses in town, because they're attracting more businesses, more pedestrians, more cyclists. Harts Avenue was never built to accommodate as much as we are experiencing today, and more tomorrow. So the more we can do to be proactive and really respect and be mindful of the safety of those that frequent our businesses and our restaurants in town, I think we're ahead of the game. So, I'm all for what's being promoted here. I'm also all for making sure that we are, as Renee puts it, clear, consistent when it comes to expectations, as well as how we enforce going forward.
Great. Dave, so I'm just going to, because we've all talked a lot, you support the 6-month extension, and you support the staff recommendation that we have before us with some clarifications. Okay, great. Karen, did you want to add something else? You need to unmute, sorry.
Want to make sure I was quiet a minute ago.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
The Danville master plan, the comment that I made is that it would start coming up on May 17th, but it's going to take up to 2 years probably to start implementing this. And it still may be in phases depending on the costs, but they have been, SWAs has very creative ideas. My comment is that people are looking for what is the possible things that we're looking at over the next time when we set those up. And if we're not looking at parklets, they'll know that, and it'll affect how they go forward with these decisions. And this is a very short time period. I want to remind you again that 7 months is a short time to absorb heavy costs.
So it sounds like there's I'm going to get back to you, Robert, in a second, that there's a consensus that we want to extend this to January 3rd, 2023. That seems to be a consensus to take the staff recommendation. Staff seems to have assured us that all of those questions of adding things and the enforcement, that is all in there, and that they are sending a message that both our staff and fire department are going through making sure, as Councilmember Fong said, everything is done being safe, as they did in the beginning, but now it's been so long, they have to go back through and make sure that those safety things are in compliance. Vice Mayor Storr.
Yeah, I'm gonna begin by saying that I've never heard clear and concise so many times during a town council meeting. Oh my God. Look, staff is clear and concise. They set up a temporary land use permit, and it covered all the bases. Town council works in a different world. I live in a gigantic gray area. Staff works in black and white, and there's not a lot of latitude. That's why they come to council, and they look to council to guide the process to help the majority of the businesses. Well, we've narrowed it down to the businesses that actually took the time to spend the money during a very difficult period of time when they probably didn't have the money to spend to build these parklets. And with the exception of one down at what used to be Kane Sushi, I don't even know what it is today, they've all done a really nice job. I mean, look at Maurice's point of view on this. I'm going to buy a new tent. Not that I want to, but I'm going to buy a new tent because my 20-foot tent, if you make me go down to 8 foot, will not look really well, and it won't look tasteful, and it won't look elegant. So I'm going to spend the money on an 8-foot tent. We are literally at the end of the road right now. We've already extended this so many times. And that's because as a council, we thought this pandemic was going to end after 6 months. And how shocked were we? And then when we got to wintertime, that we had to keep going. Right now, we have an opportunity. And as Rob said, we can't make a lot of changes to this. So we have one opportunity, and we are on the doorstep to make a good decision on behalf of 2 businesses, 3, if you count the ones across the street. I get the ones across the street, maybe, the Ccta family or Randy Nagy wants the street opened up there. Maybe we look at that one as moving it. So if that's what they want, I certainly want to make the Ccta family and Randy Nagy happy as well. So Randy seems like, Darren seems like he's okay with moving that. The 2 that we have on church, at the 11th hour, 7 months from the conclusion, to make somebody actually spend money and redo and revamp and for 7 months doesn't seem fair to me. So for me, I'd almost make a motion just to see if it would fail to continue with Church Street just the way it is and just leave it the way it is for 7 more months. They've already spent the money. They've already got the furniture there. They've already set it up, and we haven't had any issues with the exception of one, which is the line of sight. And we can certainly rectify that. I feel like, in a way, and I don't want to say this too loud, but I feel like we're sort of punishing them because we've accepted this for over 2 years. We've all had dinner there. We have not gone through, and I appreciate Dave Crompton saying, look, we're not heavy-handed on this. We wanted our business to survive. We want them to actually succeed. So I appreciate that we are not heavy-handed. But right now we're at the doorstep, and we could make a decision to say, look, let's just leave it the way it is, but maybe adjust the Vine, Harvest, and Bridges side. But I would certainly leave church alone because we haven't had any issues there.
Well, yeah, I haven't said a lot. I said I support what staff has presented in this. We keep getting caught on this. Let's be honest. And you're being honest, Vice Mayor Storr. It always has gotten down to one business owner that we keep coming back to, and we struggle. And let's be honest, that business owner has told me and others, and we get to see how our economy is doing. Their gross is better than it was in 2019, much, much better. They are the only business in town who got more than $2 million through PPEs, plus they got the single largest forgivable SBA loan when all the other businesses, and one right next door, said, we're sorry, we don't have any money left because we've given it all out. So if we want to say that there's an opportunity to get free outdoor dining without having to pay the hundreds of thousands of dollars that other businesses, and do we want to continue harming other businesses on the other side? I hear that there is at least consensus from the council, as well as some of the property owners, that they want that and they're willing to spend those dollars. They already have the barricades. Yes, they need, and guess what? Some of them need to replace those tents because they're in such bad shape. So you can take that and debate this issue and turn it into a one business thing, which is not fair to that business. Or we can say, we're just enforcing, and yes, we're celebrating that we're going to extend this to January 3rd, 2023. And yes, there is a change in some businesses, but everybody has equal right. And that business owner has the right to even add more space. so they can create the net. Is there a small cost and increment? They don't have to buy any more tables. They certainly got all the tables for it. Yes, they might have to spend a few $1,000s on that. We can have a separate conversation on that, but it seems let's send the right message. The opportunity here is we support businesses, we support it. We just need to make sure it's the same level playing field, because we've inadvertently given 3 individual businesses a huge, huge, huge benefit over the other ones. And we didn't mean to do
keep it in mind. So
we didn't mean to do that. Yeah,
no, I understand. But in the scheme of equity, we've allowed literally every business in town that wanted a parklet, and that was a restaurant. We said, hey, potentially you could have a parklet. Just ask for it, and we'll see if we can make it work.
And we enforced the rules on it, and we enforced those.
Of course, because we leveled the playing field, and we said, hey, you want a parklet? It makes a lot of sense. Go ahead and do that. Well, we worked our way. Well, I'm just saying, I don't want to fault somebody that actually understands the system. You know, a lot of businesses, and including ours, we actually got PPP money. SBA is just a normal outlet that you can actually, all small business can use it. So
no, not this. This was a special fund set up for restaurants only. It was a multi-billion-dollar fund. It got sucked up. Each individual restaurant was allowed to get up to $5 million, up to 2 locations for $10 million.
Yeah, no, I understand.
One restaurant in town got that. So
but here we are today. I mean,
we're still talking. Yeah, we're arguing about something we shouldn't be arguing with. This has nothing to do with a individual business owner, and it's not fair to that business that we keep pointing this ordinance. And the only person we keep hearing from is that person, and everybody pivots around it. This is a Danville-wide ordinance for the benefit of everybody under an equal level playing field. Renee?
You just said exactly what I wanted to say. This is a Danville-wide ordinance under an equal playing field, equal rights, consistency. We've said that numerous times, and I think that that's what we're talking here. We need to take out of the equation in individual businesses, and as a town be consistent. That's the issue here. David, and as well as code enforcement, how do you possibly know what is an infraction, what's not? And even though, Robert, to your point, it's a temporary situation, we are moving forward right now. It's been 2.5 years of permanent, in a sense, even though it's temporary. So we as a town have got to put guidelines in. We've got the tents in there, maintaining the tents. All those things are so important. But I think the additional verbiage is the clarity of what a parklet is, giving the opportunity for them to expand if they so wish, as well as other businesses, and being consistent. I think that that's the message that we need to put out there. I think the town needs the ability to also be clear on what exactly is considered within the code enforcement guidelines. So, you know, I personally think that we need to take out of the equation a business, many businesses, just moving forward. This is our guideline. This is our ordinance. This is what we're doing. Refer back to the compliance issues on the other ordinances, so that we can have that as a reference. If somebody says they can click on it on the website and see what it is, somebody else comes in, they want to have a 20-foot, wide parklet, and we say, I'm sorry, we can't do that for you. Well, then why can they? So we need to be consistent, concise, and I know those are words that we've been using a lot. You're right.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get that embroidered for you on something. But anyways, but I think it's important that staff have this clarity so that they can move forward as well. So I just want to say that the staff did a great job listening to us last time. This time's a little bit more difficult, and I'm apologizing for all of us on this, but I just think that what we've mentioned already, the consistency, the 8 foot or less, and the reference to the prior sign ordinance as well as fire ordinance and everything else is really important. And your ability to, the failure to comply, I think could be a little bit more defined as well, to give us the ability to not wait a year and let everybody else ride this wave thinking that it's going to go into a downtown master plan.
Yeah, it's just in 7 months, clear and concise goes away, because in theory, unless short of extending this because of some gigantic COVID outbreak, it goes away. And, we're only 7 months away. That's my position is. And look, I'm happy. I'm proud of the council for moving this thing forward to January. Proud of staff for working with the businesses to, figure out what they could keep there in place and, and sort of work towards, satisfying the temporary land use permit. But we're 7 months away. And my position
Right.
is.
Well, and we were, and I get what you're saying, Robert, but to all fairness, moving forward, we have to give direction, and all we keep doing, and I've said it before, kick the can. I'm not going to say that thing again, but, because now we're going to start talking about that, because that's what
Thank you.
last. Thank you. So I just think that if we don't, then that's exactly what we're doing again.
Yeah. As I said in my opening comments, I appreciate the fact that we have 8-foot parklets that are still in place. I appreciate what we've done as a council, but my preference would be just let this go and actually kick the can down the road 7 more months and just let it go. But I'm not even that good at math, but I can count up to 3 for sure.
Newell's on mute, and that's probably for him. He's probably.
I finally had to mute myself. I can't. So Renee, were you making a motion? I thought I heard you start.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
So go ahead.
Okay, so let's go ahead and start with whatever. Let's see. Let me grab my notes here so I don't forget anybody else's notes.
Start out high level, and if you have something specific you want to add.
Okay, so basically what we have in the staff report, we're bringing that forward. As I mentioned, I'd like to see that we have a definition put in place in reference to the size of the parklets, more so clearly defined. I'd also,
in the sense of, can I just interject, in the sense of what Rob suggested, on where they occur on streets, that it be up to a maximum
of 8.
Subject to the land use specific site.
Exactly, which is what I was going to say, the clearly defined parklet size and location, depending on, land use and all that. I think it's also important that we have it refer back to our current ordinances that I mentioned before, specifying the sign ordinance. I think that should be a part of that, just to have that clarity in language to make sure for the fire and for all of that. We are also extending this until the January due date as far as when it comes back up. Hold on one second. And you don't want me to repeat all of the discussion in reference to the amplified music and the garbage and all of that. We don't need to add that. We'll just say what staff has. And then also the clarity on the failure to comply and the timeline for that to make sure that.
So what I hear is, just if I may, is that you are moving the resolution as presented here tonight with 3 additions.
That's right.
Definition, clarity, maximum 8 foot where it occurs on the street, that the enforcement will be acted on, and even though that's already in there, we're making it publicly noted that we must do that for safety reasons, and the fire department must do that.
Right.
And the third one was the
line of sight. I think it was line of sight.
No, she didn't mention that.
That's
a standard they have.
That's a standard safety that I was told was already in the ordinance.
Okay.
And and the ability to act on it. Exactly. So yeah.
All right. Good. Is there a second? A second?
Wow.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion or comments? Karen.
Yeah, I'm not real happy with putting in the maximum of 8 foot. I like the clarity, but what I heard from Rob was that, or whoever said it, whether it was David or Rob, is that it matters a great deal on the site when you're doing this, and that they have already done that through the permit system much more effectively than putting a straight number that can be some reason on a particular site changed. The second thing is, I don't like the wording in here of like new conditions, because we're not going to go up and down all these parklets in the next 7 months and tell everyone else that they have 3 days to determine what they have to do with their parklets if they're not like new, which was just put in there casually when those words were used. So yes, we want them to be clean and well maintained and safe.
Okay,
But,
good.
like
That's a good
new,
clarification. How
I don't
about, we'll ask the maker of the motion, instead of like new, can we take Karen's words and substitute that?
Yeah, no, I think that's great because like new can mean a lot of things to different things to a lot of different people.
So we
So
agreed to
appreciate
Karen's
that.
modification. So you as the motion maker, I would second that.
Okay.
Okay. And the other thing, can we go back to Rob? Rob, would you suggest anything to address Karen? Is there a concern? You had suggested to say up to 8 foot, then subject to whatever the site conditions. Is there some other way to say that?
Hey, Dave, you're on mute there.
No, I was asking you, Rob.
Yeah, I think Dave was speaking.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I'll let Dave go first.
Wow, Dave, that was good.
Almost made it to. So when we approve a land use permit for these temporary, for these parklets, the diagram that you saw that I went through for Church Street is basically what we approve, and it shows the dimensions 8 feet by 50 or 72, and I give Andy Dillard all the credit in the world, because when these were coming in and we were trying to hold hands and try to get these land use permits approved, they weren't able to do the site plans, and so Andy took it upon himself to do it himself, give it to them. But it is different on each one, because we generally let them go as wide as their frontage on a street, so they can go along their entire property line. There may be some that have driveways or other reasons why they can't go all the way. So it is kind of a case by case, but I think the 8 feet extension into the right of way that takes up a parking stall basically is pretty standard throughout downtown.
Okay. So,
And so to Newell, to that point, the length is one thing, the width is another. So we're talking width. So let's if we don't define it by length, but we define it by width, encroachment into the street,
right,
is what we want to do.
Right. I think what was suggested, and I understand Karen's concern, it does vary from site to site, as David has pointed out, but we know, and no permit was issued that exceeded 8 feet.
That's right.
So if we just had that added to it, as you suggested, and it's silent on the rest of it else because we have all those other standards, we're not making any changes. We're just making it clear that if somebody new comes in who wants to go 20 or 30 feet, the answer is no if it's on the public right of way on the street.
Right.
So, okay.
Right. And that was the original application was for the 8 by 50 area, which David had mentioned.
Okay.
Not the 20.
All right. So any further comments or discussion? Yes, Dave. Second.
Yeah, just and maybe it's already built into the process, but a comment was made regarding Church Street and that intersection, and by making it a two-way, I mean, life has changed and traffic patterns have really changed right there in that area there, and more specifically that intersection. Is that part of the evaluation process, to take a look at all of the intersections and peripherals when it comes to traffic surveying, and make sure that we just didn't create a potential problem with more traffic or congested traffic, or something else that might take place?
Dave, what exactly? I'm not quite clear what you're.
So it's a two-way intersection, and we now have two-way traffic on Church. What does it do for traffic coming down Hearts? What does it do going either north or south?
Yeah, we're trying to find what is the it you're mentioning?
Yes. Does that create more congestion? Should there be stop signs or no stop signs?
No, that's not. Yeah, that's not part of it. We're not making traffic changes. We're just opening up the public street.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a separate. That would be a separate discussion if we look at downtown traffic patterns and things like that. But related to a parklet, a temporary parklet, we have a standard, and that is two-way. That is a public street with two-way traffic on it.
That's fine. You're answering my question. I just didn't want to muddy and add more complexity.
No, we're not. No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And that study's been done for that street as well. prior to, so.
Boy, if
But
we
anyways.
ran government like this on every issue, we would never get anything. I don't know why.
So anyway, so the maker of the motion, I agree with what we discussed in that sense. If I'm fine with that, so.
Okay, so
And
we've
I was
just
second.
we've made the 4 simple changes.
Yes.
And the last change was Karen's suggestion, both the maker of the motion, instead of like new, we would use her verbiage there.
It's well-maintained and safe.
There you go.
Well maintained, safe, yeah.
Okay, with that, I'm going to ask Marie to call the roll, please. And I also, I'm sorry, I saw it was Michelle Landis who had raised her hand. Unfortunately, once we close a public hearing, legally, we cannot reopen it. We appreciate your comments. And if there's something you'd like to send us separately, please do so. But we can't reopen a public hearing now. Marie, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Fong,
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan,
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Storer,
Yes.
and Mayor Arnerich.
Yes.
The ordinance was approved unanimously at the first reading, and it will return for second reading on May 17th.
Great. Thank you to everybody, and thank you particularly the staff and all the ability from Jill and David trying to work with those really 2 business owners in this particular case. But what's really here to celebrate is throughout Danville, and we only have a tendency to talk about downtown, but this applies to all the shopping centers, to Luna Locas, to Piatti's, to I've forgotten all the other restaurants that are over there, but all of those get to stay for another 6 months, and we should celebrate that the council supported doing that. We made a clarification in one area, and there's a lot of reasons, and we can debate that till we turn blue, but we've moved forward to do that. And thank you to the chamber. Thank you to Darren for your patience and everything. And we hope that you will also consider, if it helps, to take on 2 additional spaces. So, with that, we'll move on to our next item, which is item number 9. And let me scroll down. My apologies real quick. Item number 9 is under Town Council reports, and 9.1 is the Parks and Recreation Arts Commission liaison by Councilmember Fong. Dave, you're up.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I will definitely try to keep this presentation brief. Yeah, as everyone knows, the Parks and Arts Commission, Parks Rec and Arts Commission does more than just review site plans for public parks, recreation, art, and cultural areas of activities. They're really committed towards advocating and promoting the mental and physical health programs and activities for our community. And as stated earlier, much more of a focus on mental wellness. And there's been a lot of great conversations about how they can work more closely with the community, the town, on encouraging and engaging our public so they can be much more both mentally as well as physically healthy. Commission consists of 8 members, and I want to really thank them on behalf of the town council because they're hard workers. They contribute, but they're very passionate about their town. And I truly do believe that when it comes to, what does the town do to do for me, or what value do I get that they truly trust the commission and what they've been able to offer up in support of the town and community. It's been a busy year for the Parks Commission. Some quick accomplishments. There's a new sports field lighting over at Diablo Vista, which is very important for obviously the soccer players, but also for the general community as well. And they have spent some time taking a look at how best to invest in the longer term future of Oak Hill Playground, not just looking at replacement of playground equipment, but really taking a look at the park and what it can do to be a destination for the changing demographics in that community and the proximity to the community when it comes to the usage of the park as well. For the for the next year, there's probably 7 primary focus areas. One is really looking at the town green as an enabler towards promoting more programs and really highlighting more service organizations, especially in the fitness area. growth of pickleball. Where is that going? We get a lot of demand, and we're now looking and exploring opportunities to meet the demands of our public who really have taken on the sport of pickleball. How to continue to educate and offer programs that are both mentally as well as physically stimulating to our community. And that's part of the community outreach that we want to really spend time with, to make sure that we're connected when it comes to supporting and advocating and promoting programs that are good for the community. Transportation. With parks, recs, and art, it's more than just the facilities themselves. It's taking a look at the trails, how to make sure that there's an age-friendly roadmap that can be promoted and advocated. And I think going forward, taking a look at the parks and how they can be much more a part of our total community and encourage more usage, using transportation as an enabler. They're also going to be taking a look at the park facilities and how to, and it's primarily stepping back and saying, they've been around for a while, but as we take a look at our changing demographics, the needs of our community, what's right for our parks going forward, and how do we position those parks to best serve our changing demographics in town. They're looking at the budget, and obviously we're going to be very involved working with both the town as well as the council on managing the right priorities with the right dollars. And then finally, social vision, which is really spending a little bit more appreciation and understanding, working with some of the other commissions and also the town when addressing the area of mental health and what is the role of parks and art when it comes to supporting and advocating that particular area that's so needed right now for our community. And most important, I think the community would welcome our support and commitment to help them. Again, thanks again to the Parks, Recs, and Art, and it's all you do, and you do much more. And I really appreciate everything we've done, and I know the town council does as well.
Great, Councilmember Funk, thank you for that report, and absolutely agree with 100% of what you said. This takes us to item number 9.2, San Juan Valley Unified School District Liaison, report by Vice Mayor Storr. I threw you under the bus. No, you need to unmute, Robert.
What a rookie thing to do, especially when I'm trying to be clear and concise. Jesus. Here, first of all, the school district liaison is an amazing group that we get together, and it was monthly, and now we sort of work through quarterly. Wonderful exchange of information and updates. Dr. Malloy, our superintendent, director of facilities, communications, our school board members. We have staff, which is Joe Calabrigo, Henry Perez Alonso, Newell, and myself. Usually the mayor and vice mayor take this position. And we talk about all the things that are going on in the school district and all the things that are going on in the town, how we can work together, how, even down to bell times, and how we can coordinate, school drop-offs. And so it's been a wonderful exchange of information. School district, certainly coming out of COVID and getting kids back to school, mask mandates and all the things that have gone on the horizon. When we say, hey, how can we help you? There wasn't really a lot we could do on this, but the updates are valuable. Henry especially gets a lot out of this because he knows exactly what each and every school is doing, and that sort of coordinates with his recreation department. And I appreciate the relationship with the school district. It's gotten, I think, really, really solid.
Great, Robert. I just add one little thing. That the Monte Vista pool, as you know, is being rebuilt and enlarged, and it will open, it'll be completed next week. They're just doing punch lists. Danny Hillman, who's the assistant superintendent, who's in charge of facilities, he is a rock star in my book. Forget a project like that done so efficiently, on time, and Henry, as Robert mentioned, is working with them getting our swim classes scheduled this year. So it's all good, just in time.
Yeah, actually, when we thought Gary Black retired, we thought he did a heck of a job as facility manager. Danny came in, and it's like they didn't miss a beat.
Yeah,
so, excellent.
Yeah, good groundwork. All right, and now item number 9.3, we're going to go to County Connection board member report by Vice Mayor Storr.
Yeah, I'm always excited about County Connection because we're constantly evolving. And Newell made a comment the other day, hey, the buses look empty. Well, maybe where you saw the bus, it looked empty, but in the other part of the world where buses, where people actually ride the bus, they are impacted. The schools, the monument corridor. But one of the things that we worked on that we're pretty excited about is we used to get complaints from people, especially if they're going to, let's say, leukemia treatments or cancer treatments, and they're getting to their doctor. We could get them there, but we couldn't get them back on time. So it wouldn't be uncommon for someone to wait 2 hours for a bus to come, the small little 6-seater buses. So what we did was we partnered with LAFTA and we said, hey, we have 11 cities here. But why do we have to stop at the 11 cities? Can't we cross boundaries and actually meet with the LAFTA representatives, which is a Livermore Amador Valley Transportation Authority, and try to work with them because they could pick up our clients, we could pick up their clients, and then all of a sudden we have an overlap of services, which made the buses a lot more efficient. On the horizon, we are looking at hydrogen fuel cells and electricity as the main source of energy. We're going to pull ourselves away from gasoline requirements, and they're looking at somewhere around 2040, but we're trying to get this thing closer to 2027. We have some new buses that we're looking at. We're not buying the big buses anymore. We're buying the middle-sized buses because they seem to be a lot more efficient, and we can get a lot more drivers to actually drive the smaller buses than the large one. We're looking at solar on the building. Surprisingly, we have we're putting an electric charging station in for our buses. We've partnered with BART so that at each BART in Walnut Creek especially, in Orinda, they have a charging station there for the trolleys that work through Walnut Creek. But we don't have solar at our bus yard. So we're working on that. We think we found some grants that can actually handle that because it seems like everybody in the world's getting a grant to put solar on their buildings or their carports. And we've just, if you pardon the expression, we've missed the bus on that one. So we are working on that right now. And then the big part of this is, unfunded liabilities. We try our best as a board to keep it right around 89 or 90% funded. We were about 91.4 last year. This year, we're somewhere around 90.2 to 89.9. I can't remember the number exactly, but we are trying to keep that at the sweet spot. And the holy grail of unfunded liability payments is right around 90%. And we have hit that number now for the last 3 years, even during COVID. We're able to hit that number, and we weren't sure if we could do that because the whole world was collapsing around us. So it was just horrible. But thank you for letting me be on County Connection because I think this is absolutely an amazing opportunity to make a difference. And naturally, don't forget, I hope before I retire, I want to see buses on the shoulder because that is such a cool concept.
Yeah. Robert, thank you, and thank you for serving on that and keeping us informed. And we appreciate that. Okay, are there any other council reports?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not a council member, but once you're all done, I do have one quick thing I need to run by all of you. So,
okay, why don't we go to you, Rob, and then I'm going to close the meeting in memory of somebody after this. Go ahead, Rob.
So just to update you on something you said early on, we have been planning we postponed tonight as a hybrid meeting to May 17. That may not happen now. So we had another problem yesterday during a test with the hardware. IT has their consultant coming out on Monday to look at it. So we will have more information next Tuesday at your study session.
Okay.
But for now, I wouldn't tell people that it's going to be a hybrid meeting. So
okay. Well, it's better, as Maurice and Siri, our city clerk, has said, better to wait, do it right, so we don't have to cancel a meeting in the middle of it or something because of a technical glitch. So great, thank you for that, and thanks to staff who are working on that. I would like to take a moment here as we close this meeting, and first of all, thank all the council members for all the hard thoughts and the hard work in trying to get us through sometimes what might look like simple issues that somehow become difficult. But there are two ladies of Danville who were long-term residents that have both passed away. And first, I would like to recognize Linda Dodge, died recently at 79 years old. And we know Linda so much associated with Christy Dodge and her life here in Danville and living in Danville and her advocacy for Special Olympics. We will dearly miss her mother, and we just want to recognize her contributions to both Christy as an individual, but also to a community of special needs parents and other children. She was a great advocate for that. Also, we lost another really long time resident, Ella Smith, and we her married name ended with Vizina. But as you know, Ella and her two sons and her husband owned Smith Jewelry. And you know, the jewelry store closed in 2013. She was 92 years old and she passed away peacefully. But that family was a part of the downtown business for decades. And along with Linda Dodge and Ella Smith Vizina, we would like to close this meeting in their memory.
Thank you.
And with that, we will say goodnight. And by the way, both of those, for those who are listening, who would like to know about those services and things, those actually are both published in the East Bay Times and the Contra Costa Times. So with that, we'll close this meeting. And thanks to you. And again, Marie, thank you for being a city clerk and all the work you do. Well done.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you 52 weeks a year, Marie.
Not just one. Oh, that's good.